thinking,
Yeah.
hey, bank.
Bank,
Okay.
why?
So the holiday just, that bit about the holiday just flies by. It doesn't quite sit as it ought to.
Yeah.
And how are you doing, Eric?
I am fine, thank you. I'm glad to be here. Happy to be here. Looking forward to the show this morning.
Thank you, sir.
We will discuss the issue of insurance during COVID-19, seeking medical insurance in COVID-19, and how you finance treatment for COVID-19.
And how insurance becomes relevant, especially in terms of extreme medical situations such as this
one, yes.
It need not only be COVID. We've had cases with Ebola, we've had HIV, and I'm certain that before the century is over, or even this decade, there'll be other
pandemics.
Yes, or other conditions that will actually prove to be very challenging. Yes.
So this is one of those that we must have this conversation and understand the thinking of the insurance companies and understand the thinking of government as well.
And whether they're robust enough to actually understand the need to keep up with the times, because this is the times.
Yeah.
The time in which we live in. Call it COVID time, but yes, or season for COVID, but that is the reality.
This is it. This is the time. We'll also be reviewing again lifestyle changes and what's happening to people, losing incomes, losing jobs, getting frustrated. We've discussed this a number of times, the risk of risk to mental health.
Yes.
And especially because of loss of income. So we'll be speaking to somebody who will help us to just think about the options that one can take. Once you've lost a job, you've lost an income, you still have to feed yourself, feed your family. You have not lost your bills. You've just lost the means to pay the bills. It's a big one.
It's a good discussion. It's a good discussion that should actually perhaps even precede a situation such as this one. It should be a normal discussion that, should we say, begins at the point where one is contemplating employment before school.
Yeah.
Immediately, if you're into tertiary learning, higher learning.
Yeah.
So that by the time you're actually in employment, this is a thought process that is part of your everyday life. Yes, it doesn't have to wait for a situation that has a throat to your neck, a knife to your throat.
Yeah, it doesn't need to get to that point.
No, it doesn't need to get to that point.
Indeed. So let's begin where we always begin in terms of COVID-19 in numbers. Yesterday, number of confirmed cases was 788 with 5,521 samples tested. Now, when you hear the issue of we're still dealing with 5,000 samples tested in a day, and then how long it takes for you to receive the results after you have presented your samples, it's still an issue of concern to me.
It usually actually is. And the concern around COVID, Eric, I don't think it's going to sort of like come to an end or peter out, because new variables keep coming into the discussion, because more information or new findings keep coming up. We're beginning to understand the virus more and more and more.
Yeah.
So sometimes we'll get to a point where the problem will be there's so much information, you are probably at a loss as to what to take in, what to put aside, what to prioritize. But that is, in my opinion, a good problem. If what you're doing is you have information and the issue you have with the information is determining how to sift it, that is a good problem. But the information will keep coming in.
It keeps coming in.
Yes.
So total number so far, 19,913 total number of confirmed cases in the country. We still, we are about 4,720 short of 300,000 samples since the beginning when we started testing for COVID. Some countries are doing this in a day. We still have, 295,000 samples done. Worldwide, the world stands at 17,219,000 confirmed COVID-19 cases, with the US still at the top with 4.5 million, Brazil at 2.6, India 1.58, and Russia 834,000. South Africa is right up there, 482. They're approaching the 500,000 mark pretty fast in terms of, the number of cases that they have. But when it comes to deaths, worldwide 671,000. Someone was telling me yesterday, look, we are talking about so far deaths at 671,000, and this is about 7 months into COVID going around the world. That may be a good sign. It's a good indicator. This is still a very low percentage of the global population.
It
considering that COVID-19 is everywhere in the world.
It is. It is. If you see I would actually juxtapose it with what we would call the death rates that the world experiences in every single year. That is not counting war situations, because that, of course, accelerates. It accelerates it. But the reality here is, if you look at the population in the world, what you will find is that there's, should we say, a representative element in it. What do I mean? There are countries where you will find that there are more deaths that have occurred than others. But now here comes a twist. You'll find they also have more people. And then you'll find other countries who also have a very large population, but they don't have these sort of numbers.
Yeah.
See? Now, that comparison is what makes you understand what can be done and should be done. Because when you compare and you say, wait, but this country has the same number of people as this one. So what's their socioeconomic situation? What is it? Because if you say, for instance, you look at, say, a country like India, Delhi itself has a population of only like 20 million people.
Yep.
And then they tell you 50% of these people are thereabouts live in the slums. Then you look at data, or information that was in the media yesterday, that close to, anecdotally speaking, 50% of the people who live in these slums are COVID positive. Now, they say that with testing, the likelihood is that the numbers will shoot up, not down. So you find that they are, when I say representative, those numbers, when looked at or added to the others in the world, you get these figures. And yet, the high numbers are actually in very specific places, as are the low numbers.
Yeah.
Yes. So this balance, even as we look at it, it's important to point out specifically where some of these problems are. Because if you look, say, for instance, at the US keeps coming up here because they seem to be racing. It's one of these races that you wish they weren't in, where the race seems to be, yes, the leader leading in
everything.
Yes, the most rapid increase in COVID infections, the most. And with that, the deaths are also following. And then Brazil also don't seem to be willing to be left far behind.
Yeah.
Now, this is not a good race.
It's not a good one.
No, the race should have been, how are we moving fast to prevent all these things? Now, that should have been the race that we're discussing.
To lower the spread, to stop the spread.
It's not as though the fight isn't there. The fight is there, but the truth of the matter is that that spread is moving quicker than our response to it. It is a reality. But I think, given the challenge that has been posed and the energy that is being put into fighting COVID, I believe we will flatten this particular curve. It will be flattened.
As the world or as the country?
I'm talking about as the world. And then we now have to come back as a country. And if I look at Kenya, as I feel we had gotten a good foothold on it, and somewhere along the line we slackened it.
Had we actually gotten a good foothold?
Yes, we had.
How? Explain.
You see, we keep saying on this very show that COVID moves in human beings.
Yep.
Okay?
Yep.
So when you talk about quarantine, when you talk about isolation, people look at the human being being isolated. But from a COVID perspective, you are ensuring that COVID doesn't go anywhere else. So you put a stop to it. If you compare that with news that WHO has been putting forth, and in a BBC transmission that I was listening to yesterday morning, they were talking to experts, and they were saying that the thing about any pandemic is people focus more on the vaccine or the cure instead of understanding that you already have a solution. It's just that you're not taking it seriously. And the solution for COVID is soap, water. Okay?
Bas.
Tusiende mbali. And why do I mention soap and water? If you look at any public health publication that talks about water, they will tell you that also 70 plus of the conditions that people come across are because they do not have access to clean water. Meaning, if you have access to clean water, you reduce 70% of the possible ailments that people could acquire. So, come to COVID. If you stop COVID from spreading, washing your hands, you are putting a halt to it. You're not moving forward. Social distancing, you're putting a halt to it. If you put a halt to it, where will it go? It will die. But when we don't do these things, what we're doing, we're allowing COVID to multiply.
So with soap and water, you believe that would be able to what?
I'm saying
Not
the
eradicate,
basic
really, but
traditional public health approach to it is what we need to continually emphasize. Because when you emphasize it, you know what you're doing? You are stopping the virus from proceeding where it was going. You stop it. And if you stop it, then this preponderous expansion of the virus that we see will be halted. Let's forget the complications. If you kill it, if you halt it, where is it going to go?
Is it possible to halt it?
Yes, it is. It is. It has been found that this thing called soap actually does that. Soap. So you apply water, it stops it. And that's why you've been told sanitizers work, but soap and water are actually the best. Soap and water. Don't complicate it. Soap, water.
So I'm just trying to multiply what you're saying. So in a household, people are using soap and water. One person comes in with COVID-19, soap and water, they have killed it.
If you have soap, if you come in with COVID and you adhere to the basic norms that you've been told, social distancing, washing hands, just that, you will have halted it.
Okay. But if you have COVID-19, it's in your system.
Then that's where the isolation comes in. That's why they test you and they say, no, we can't put you there because the likelihood of you infecting them is high.
It's high.
We put you aside.
So isolate.
Yes.
And then let the virus.
Yes, let the viral load go down. Let's get to a point where it is no longer a problem and you can't transmit it. Yes, that's what it is. Now, it's been complicated because quarantine has become like a swear word. Okay? Isolation was a swear word before even quarantine. Okay? So when you mention it, the element of COVID is even removed from the discussion. You are now talking about the person, the people. And then when we threw in the cost, oh man, we lost
It becomes
the completely.
it becomes completely complicated.
Yes.
Maybe that's what actually explains, well, you'd look at it and see those are the measures that China took. First of all,
they understood.
Quarantine everybody.
Yes.
So everybody who has it, its viral load drops.
We've cornered you. There's no moving. Yeah. And then we're ensuring that if you have it, it drops and you're not transmitting it to somebody else. Yes.
Makes a lot of sense now.
And it's something now, if you ask the question, can we do it? Of course we can. Forget these esoteric discussions we keep having.
We don't have money.
That's why it's soap and water. The moment you bring in this ver and the other ver and this, then you have a problem because now cost comes in.
Yeah.
And when cost comes in, then we say we don't have money. It is a correct argument. We actually don't have that sort of money. But that's a different discussion. You know why, Eric? Because of the nature of big pharma and the way the business models are skewed, you will find that a Kenyan may be paying for a branded drug. He'll be paying more money than the person who taking the same drug in
another country.
Yes, but that's a discussion yet for another day.
Hey, that's a hot one. That one is a hot one. Let's take a break at 16 minutes after 6. This is the Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. Happy Eid, and we hope that you enjoy this public holiday. Let's take a look at the weather shortly, and then we come back and start looking at the big stories of the day in the newspapers this morning. Good morning.
24/7 around the world non-stop. This is Spice FM.
Okay, it's not looking very, very good today in Nairobi. It's cold. 13 degrees Celsius. You know, when some people hear 13 degrees and they hear you saying it's cold, they're like, really, guys? It's so hot. 13 degrees Celsius in Nairobi this morning. Expected to rise to around 23. Kisumu is 19 at this hour, and we shall rise to 28 degrees. Njeri, 13 degrees lows and highs of 22 degrees. Malindi is already 24 degrees as at 6 a.m. and is expected to rise to 28 degrees. Mombasa, it's 24 degrees as well. Some light rain showers expected later in the day, and the temperature is rising to 28 degrees. Clear skies in Nakuru this morning at 12 degrees Celsius, going to hit 23 later in the day. And in Kakamega, you've got clear skies with periodic clouds at 15 degrees Celsius this morning and expected to hit 26 later in the day. Eldoret is one of those cold Friday mornings, 12 degrees, clear with periodic clouds, expected to hit a high of only 22 degrees, which is lower than what Mombasa is right now as we speak. Kampala, Uganda, partly cloudy, 18 degrees, 26 later in the day. Let's go to Lagos, Nigeria, 24 degrees Celsius, cloudy day, highs of 27. And then in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, it's going to be partly cloudy, 24 degrees right now. Later, it'll hit 29 degrees. We'll be giving you more weather updates from other parts of the world in late subsequent hours. Good morning. It's 20 minutes after 6. Let's look at the big stories this morning. What do you want to start, CT?
Well, I was thinking of starting with something political, but then I figured, no. Let me talk about our children to learn under trees, Magoha.
So this is what Magoha said yesterday, is it?
Well, one of the things that he said, he also said that it appears all learning in higher, lower, middle, tertiary system will begin next year.
So the earlier instruction to open colleges in September.
That seems to have been rescinded.
Because of what reason?
Well, let me put it this way. Everything considered.
Yeah.
And one, our preparedness, let's start there.
Yeah.
To make our environment friendly or COVID-free. I don't think those are in place. Number one.
Yep.
Number two, if you want people to learn in a manner, let's say for higher education, that is also compatible with what we need to do, that is also not ready. And then there's this little detail of ensuring that parents are prepared in time. Because when children go back to school, parents will be expected to pay fees, irrespective of whether you lost your job, your salary was cut, etc. So if you make the announcement now, this is my opinion. We'll go to what he actually said.
This is what you deduce.
This is how I deduce. So when you announce it early, it's enough time for everyone to prepare in terms of, if you want to talk about it, if the union want to talk about it, there's time to talk about it. They've even brought in a discussion of how the government wants to intervene in actually ensuring that teachers who are paid by boards and people whose salaries rely on the fees can be accommodated. So it's a wholesome discussion regarding how best to ensure that we revamp the education sector and ensure that it functions. Where the trees come in is a discussion of social distancing.
Okay.
And the issue of using the halls that exist, because those are wide spaces that are often used just maybe once or twice a day, and yet they could be used for learning as well. Yes.
So we distribute now from classes to...
Yes. To spaces that are available.
Available.
Yes.
But this is for January or for immediate?
There is the discussion about some sort of learning beginning in September. But again, this is something that is still under discussion.
Okay.
And how it is they're supposed to do it and how they're supposed to get teachers to do this work, it's still under, it's one of these things that is being suggested, not being stated as something that must be done.
And they're calling it communal learning.
Yes, they're calling it communal learning.
So instead of, maybe you have been, you live in this particular village and your school is in a separate village. We're basically saying all the children in this village and you're in the same grade, you go to this facility and a tree and in a hall or something, and you learn from there.
And also, what he's also asking for is just to ascertain certain numbers. Ascertain numbers of teachers, their training levels, where they are. This is something, a task that is being given to TSC.
Yep.
And even when it comes to the students, you want to understand that many of these students may be at different stages of learning, because some schools did not stop educating their students, even with COVID.
Yeah.
Others halted completely.
Yeah.
So when you start the new year, how are you going to balance this? And then there's the issue, as I said, the use of technology. How it needs to be assessed to determine where we are at, what we have, what can be done now, and what needs to be. And if you look at it again, August to the new year, there is ample room and time for these things once the numbers that are required come in to actually be worked out, so that when schools begin, there's no hit and miss, or at least it's minimized completely.
You see, now this continues to expose how badly we were doing in very many aspects of our government.
Very true indeed.
Because, look, he says the Ministry of Education does not have accurate data on student numbers on the National Education Management Information System. Now, we know that the NEMIS was rolled out when? Was it last year or 2018?
2018.
When they started asking, all the head teachers to collect the
It was
data.
2018.
And then some head teachers were not so welcoming to this idea.
Yes, there was a push and pull.
So here we are. We don't have data. We don't know how many students we have countrywide. We don't know. We don't have accurate data on the student numbers. The only time we get proper data is when they register for exams. That is Standard 8 and Form 4. That's the only time that we get actual data.
But Eric, don't you think that's a very unfortunate statement?
Yeah.
To come from the Minister of Education. And then there's the discussion around the uneven distribution of teachers around the country.
Yes.
And the argument that the distribution seems to favor urban areas. Now, I am going to look at this thing as positively as I possibly can. This thing involves the livelihood of a very, very significant portion of
our
citizens
population
of this country, yes.
Yeah.
Now, there's time. If indeed the start point for relearning or learning again, resuming learning is January, there is time. There's time to sort out all these things. Because you cannot tell me that the schools that exist in this country, private or otherwise, don't have data of the number of students they have.
They do.
They do.
They do have this data.
And you cannot also tell me that the schools that exist in this country, and we know the schools that exist, do not have data of the teachers they have and the qualifications. They do. So, is it a problem of collation? Who dropped this particular ball?
The TSC is going to conduct an audit of its staff to ascertain the figure. What figure? Of how many teachers they have?
As if
And
they
where
don't
they're
know.
posted.
And they pay fees. They pay
the
the salaries every month, and they don't know who they're paying.
5 days.
And they don't know who they're paying to. No,
And where they are.
I know. That.
TSC is the one that posts teachers. Any transfer.
And they don't know where they post them to.
Any transfer is affected by the commission, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
So how is it that you'd be saying we don't know? Teachers are unevenly distributed across the country, so we need to do an audit to find out where teachers are.
Let us argue for purposes of maintaining.
Or maybe the audit would be this is just an idea that has come into place. With this community home-based classes, you're talking about if a teacher, how many teachers do we have around here in this village who live in this village, who can teach in this village? So you may have teachers, yes, who are posted in a certain school, but that's not where they live.
Not
And
necessarily.
for the last 4 months, they moved back home.
Precisely.
So where are they now? Maybe that's what the audit would be.
It will be, but still the question you raised doesn't go away. It actually honestly doesn't, because this education that is home-based is supposed to be free. Okay?
Yep.
Free in the sense that parents don't pay.
Yep.
And arguably, if you are a TAC teacher, you're being paid even if you haven't been working.
Yep.
So in reality, it isn't really free. You're just being told, we need your services, offer it here.
Yep.
So the people...
It is your job, basically.
Yes, the beneficiary now will be the parents and the students. But this, to me, is good thinking. You know why? If you look at the rural population that we have in this country, and the rural population, which represents perhaps the largest portion of our population, they have been disadvantaged greatly by COVID. All these online learning, all these interesting platforms that we keep talking about have been predominantly available in the urban areas, not so in the rural areas.
Not so in the rural areas.
So if something is being set up to ensure that an even playing field is being sought after before January, then this is a good thing.
This is the time to do it.
Yes. And there's time to do it. You can even plan for it, because you'll have more than a term.
There's a lot of work that needs to be done in terms of data collection. And then we'll bring in that whole debate of the security of our data. How much information are you seeking?
Yes.
Because at this point, we should be able to know that X number of students who go to this school come from this area. All that information is information that maybe the government could have.
But it does.
Of knowing that a certain pupil who is in this primary school lives in this village or this town.
No. You could also, because where you come from is part of the detail that you actually have. When you come to a school,
when you're registering, that's
yes,
the information that you fill
Oh
in.
yes, next of kin, parents, all that.
Yeah.
And there's a portion where parents also fail to say whether you're a guardian, whatever it is. It is not for lack of data. That information, believe me, is available.
there.
It's available.
It's there.
It's a question of collating it and
Yeah.
saying, okay, this is where we are. You know, if you talk about not knowing the numbers, like saying you don't know how many schools we have.
And yet, these are government schools.
Yes.
And all of them, even the private ones, are licensed by the government.
My friend, you can't have a school in this country and the government doesn't know about
Yeah.
it. It's not possible.
Yeah.
Yes. You can't have a learning institution, the government doesn't know about it. So, if you are, because if it's private, it's a business. Right? The government will want to know every detail about that school.
Yeah.
Everything.
Everything.
Teachers, what you pay them, fees, what you pay, all that. So, this story of them not having the information,
They've got a lot of information. Like you're saying, I think you are very right here, and I agree with you completely. The information is there. This is the time to do the background work. This is the time to crunch the data, look at the numbers.
this is one of
Create
those
a
situations,
proper
Eric, where COVID
picture.
has given them an opportunity to set many wrongs right.
Yeah. Yep.
And let them do it honestly, vigorously and honestly, so that when we begin in January, it gives an opportunity for a new beginning.
Yeah.
Okay?
Actually, we are not even starting to say let's collect information
No,
from
no,
them
no.
in January
No, no,
because you
no,
already
no,
have
no,
that information.
We understand that there's been an issue. We understand the year, as is reported by some media houses, may be lost. That is water under the bridge. We have an opportunity to start anew and to start better. That should be the focus.
Oh my God. I hope they take it. Let's take another break at 6:30. This is a Situation Room. Kenya's biggest conversation in the room this morning is CT Muga and Eric Latiff. We'll be looking at what's happening on the roads at 6 a.m., 6:30 a.m. on a public holiday. I don't expect anything to be there on the road, but let's see what you say. Good morning. All right, so what's happening on the roads? It's a public holiday. It's 6:30. Where would people be going? Well, there are some people who would be going somewhere, and there are others who have decided, I'm going to sleep in today. So you expect, therefore, not to have a lot of traffic on the road. Kitengela Namanga Road, Ikosafi, Outer Ring Road, Jogo Road, not bad at all. There's absolutely nothing wrong with Mombasa Road, apart from somebody who says Mombasa Road is so clear, but the cold on this road, my friend, ni kama jam inaletanga joto.
Inaleta joto mingi.
Now that there's no traffic, there's no jam, baridi imejaa. Thika Road is clear, Kiambu Road is good, wherever you want to be. I think the roads heading out of town later today are the ones that are going to be busy.
Once you have a little sunshine, believe me, they will be busy.
Yeah.
Because this is a long weekend.
It's a long weekend, and now we don't have any cessation of movement.
No, we don't.
You can move wherever you want to go. So long weekend, people may be wanting to travel. End month weekend as well. People may be wanting to travel out of town.
Yes, end of month.
Yeah.
For those who are still fortunate enough to receive a salary.
Something at the end of the month. Yes. All right. So we'll be looking at the traffic and how it looks like in about half an hour. Good morning. It's 26 minutes 7. The live stream is up, www.spicefm.co.ke. Also live streaming on Facebook, Spice FM KE, Facebook, and Twitter as well is Spice FM KE. Where else? On YouTube, Spice FM KE. We see some comments, people already tuned in on Facebook. Coril Leonard says, you're live, we're watching us live from South B, loud and clear. Good morning to you, Coril. Laban Tanui Kapte in Nandi, good morning. And Marutit Kemboy, good morning, City and Eric. Good morning to you, Marutit Kemboy.
Good morning, and thank you very much for your morning salutations.
Yes, yes. We are looking at the big stories in the papers today. So we've dealt with that one on education. We're going to be looking at the one on politics a bit later. The fate of 4 JSC nominees in limbo as court throws out city lawyer's case. So, the row between the Chief Justice and the President has taken a new twist after the High Court declined to make a decision that would have enabled the 41 judges at the center of the fight to assume office. A 3-judge bench dismissed the application to compel the Judiciary Chief Registrar Anamadi to swear in the 41 judges. City lawyer Adrian Kamodho Njenga also wanted the AG, Paul Kehara Kariuki, forced to gazette and publish the names of the judges. The lawyer was also seeking an order directing the Controller of Budget to approve withdrawal of funds from the Consolidated Fund to facilitate the judges' assumption of office. And he wanted the IG of police to assign police officers to these new judges to offer security. But the court said the order sought by the lawyer could not be issued to people who were not involved in the case.
Yes.
The judges said the orders against Amadi, the Controller of Budget, the Inspector General of Police, would have been difficult to enforce because the 3 were not respondents in the petition. So this was just a technical issue. Basically, they said, all right, okay. So you want us to order the IG, but you have not listed the IG as a respondent in your suit. You also want us to order
Registrar.
the registrar.
Not listed.
Not listed. Sasa. Imagine.
Not that the case wasn't a viable one. It was. But technical knockout.
My God. A court of law shall not act in vain by issuing orders against persons that are not parties to a suit or an application. This may lead to difficulties in enforcing such orders. Does it make... Is it making absolute sense?
You actually wonder, when you read this, so what exactly was this lawyer trying to achieve? Because he seemed to have acted against his own best interest.
Yeah. He seems to have ignored some crucial part of this.
Oh, very, 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 very crucial. Very, very crucial. And he is a lawyer.
Which is why I'm asking, is it something that has happened before? And maybe the lawyer and other lawyers would looked at that suit and they thought, well, yeah, I mean, this has happened before. And then the judges are the ones who looked for the slightest loophole not to commit themselves to a decision.
You know, in February, the judge, what the judge said was this. Though there is a violation of the Constitution, we cannot issue the orders sought. You see, the orders sought have to comply not with just one aspect of the Constitution, but should we say with a composite understanding of what the Constitution intends and purposes to achieve. Okay? So if one bit seems to be in order and there are other bits that don't seem to be in tandem, then unfortunately that thing cannot move forward.
There are very many flaws in this application because
You have to ask what really was happening here.
this lawyer had sought orders against a party described as second respondent, but the petition had only one respondent, and this is the Attorney General. And so the judges were saying the Judicial Service Commission, the Chief Justice, and the Law Society of Kenya were only interested parties in the case. They were not respondents. So you want us to issue an order against a respondent that does not exist. It's a party that does not exist.
You know, and there are very many things they also say that if joining the chief registrar as a party to the application would have meant changing the respondents. In short, this wasn't done.
Yeah.
What you see?
Yeah. So what was the lawyer after?
Yes.
Did he present a flawed case from the very beginning?
We have to ask that question.
Willingly and knowingly?
Yes.
Willfully?
Yes. Was it? You see, this same in February 6th, they said once the JSC has made recommendation, the president cannot review, refuse, consider, or select who to appoint. They said.
They basically agree that these judges, as far as we're concerned, these guys
should actually be sworn in.
sworn in.
However,
now this
case that you've presented,
we cannot
it cannot achieve what you want
Yeah.
because of flaw this, and this.
Aye.
Meaning you're being taught the ABCD of the law
Yeah.
with regards to what it is that you wanted.
Yeah.
And it can't be at one judge. There are three guys, three individuals.
Okay.
And they're in agreement.
Yeah. It's clear to them.
There's no dissenting voice here.
It's clear to them. I mean, they're all in agreement.
Remember when we were discussing this earlier on in the year, and when it was a really heated debate, and the Chief Justice was up in arms and what have you, and I was of this opinion that, serious as it is, the perspective I have chosen to give it is that this is how you see the democratization process being exercised. This is how you see the boundaries of our constitution and the understanding of it being expanded. In the absence of what appear to be these disagreements, my friend, it will be very, very difficult for you to take an interest in some of these things. But once it presents itself in a live case such as this one here, where there's a clear disagreement about certain matters, then the constitutional guidelines regarding these matters come to the fore. It's in the public, it has to be in the public domain. It forms part of the public debate. So you're informed. So this is the robust way in which, see, this check and balance we talk about.
It's important.
Yes. And we're seeing it here.
It is important. And in fact, I've seen the story in the Standard about the same. It's saying that the judges said, okay. You see, the lawyer was seeking orders to compel the Attorney General to gazette these judges
Yes.
as duly appointed. They said that would be unconstitutional.
Yes.
Because the Constitution says that the appointing authority is the president.
Simple.
The AG cannot appoint.
Simple. So, are you saying this lawyer didn't know this?
Okay.
You see, the robust nature of our constitution and what it is, and what was intended by the drafters to provide a check and balance between the executive, the legislative, okay, and the judiciary.
And the judiciary.
We are actually seeing it playing before our
play.
eyes here.
We're seeing it at play.
It is at play. And this is now really, honestly, what you call a check and balance. So even when people rush to blame the president over certain things, it becomes clear that the thing the president can't do. Even if he would like to, he can't.
Yeah. Yep.
Just like the same thing the court can't do. You brought it before the court, they tell you, look, what you want we can't do.
Yeah.
Why? We are constrained by the Constitution because this is what the Constitution says, this is what our laws say. So we cannot do it. And what is interesting, if you read, they're actually telling him, you ought to have done this and this and this if this is what you wanted. They've told him that. This is what you ought to have done. In pointing out the flaws to your case, they're telling you this should have been included. You know, but the question that we must ask Eric is this. This was a really serious case. And I do not think that this lawyer acted alone. These are cases where you have more than one lawyer. This may be the person who presents the case on behalf of the others.
Yeah,
as
including the LSK, I think, who are
Yes.
interested parties
Yes.
in this. So other people must have looked.
Yes. So they also have access to researchers, etc., etc. So how on earth did they not foresee these flaws?
Let's see what their reaction would be to this. Other big stories in the papers this morning. So there is the issue of a high-profile poacher who walked into police arms. This was covered in yesterday's papers, all the papers yesterday. It's about the story of a man called Mansoor Mohammed Surur, who got entangled in the dark world of illegal game trading and poaching. And he came close, but for close to a decade, he is part of a four-man gang that traversed the African continent, decimating elephant and rhino populations for profit. Within that period, Surur had he and his three colleagues, Muazu Kroma, Amar Sharif, and Abdi Hussein Ahmed, were responsible for the poaching of approximately 35 rhinos, more than 100 elephants, close to R1 billion in sales. After being on the run for more than a year and the arrest of two key partners in Kroma and Sharif in Uganda and Senegal respectively, Surur was finding it hard to be out there. His key links had been cut. The only other member of their original boys club, Ahmed, was missing in action. So this man was in the America's Most Wanted list. He was nabbed in Kenya. So this is telling the story of how he arrived in Kenya. Amidst the coronavirus pandemic, Surur was hatching a plan that would see him fly into Kenya under an alias as soon as the borders were reopened and melt away under the Mombasa sun, and then proceed to Kampala, Uganda's capital, which had previously served him and his partners well over very many years. However, unknown to him, the ship that he had so tightly run for close to a decade had sprung a leak. News got to Nairobi that Surur, who had an outstanding warrant of arrest by the American Department of Justice, would be one among 33 passengers aboard a chartered flight to the Moi International Airport in Mombasa. When that Skywood aircraft from Yemen capital Sana'a touched down, his freedom took off as he walked into the hands of law enforcement officers lying in wait. This arrest, like the previous two of his other colleagues, was a culmination to an investigation spearheaded by the American Drug Enforcement Agency, supported by Kenya, Tanzania, Mozambique. Man just boarded a plane. Man thought, I'm fine, I'm safe. Man must have, even changed his appearance to avoid arrest.
But what is of interest is that...
Kumbe, DEA guys.
Yes, and they also had some undercover agents
Yep.
who had been following this issue, and they'd been planning it. Long game. Let this particular bird feel they have the freedom to fly.
Yeah.
Then we'll be able to
Then
get
we'll be
hold
able
of
to
it.
help.
Yes.
Let's just watch his next
You
moves.
know, in this communication age, crime becomes really very dicey. It shouldn't be an enterprise of choice because the likelihood of actually getting away and enjoying the spoils that you probably have labored for, by and large, are fairly dim.
Yeah.
It is not difficult to get hold of you.
Yeah.
No.
It's quite hard. Looking at the newspapers this morning, right here on Spice FM, the Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. We want to take a break at 14 minutes to 7 o'clock. And then we'll be back to look at other big stories. There are very many big stories. Today's papers are actually full of drama. We'll be looking at more of that drama as the show progresses. Good morning. 11 minutes to 7 o'clock. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. We are looking at the big stories in the papers today. We've looked at The Nation. We've looked at The Standard. We are still looking at others, the Business Daily, the Star. What do you have, City?
Well, there's something interesting in the Star. It's actually the headline. Akombe. IBC insiders led Msando to death.
Huh?
Yes, the headline in the Star.
IEBC insiders led Msando to death.
Yes.
Is this a statement made to the police or?
Well, she says that.
Or a new book? Tell-all. A new tell-all biography by Dr. Akombe.
Akombe seems to communicate very effectively with tweets.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But she seems to be the one voice that has constantly brought this Msando issue and constantly talks about it. Clearly, it's something that bothers her.
Yeah.
Yes. That somebody who held such a serious position died on the eve of an election, unfortunately, cannot be said to have been an accident. Even if by the widest stretching of one's imagination you thought so, no one would want to believe it. He did what? What job did he have? No.
Doesn't matter.
And especially when you look at how hotly contested and the aftermath of those elections. Unfortunately, it's one of those cases where he just can't die.
Yeah.
No. And what she has ignited is yet another discussion around what the competitive nature of our politics and what actually goes on. But what I'm actually really concerned about is this. This is not the first time that this country is encountering something this bizarre and something this painful. Not really. We've had political assassinations. I'm using the word political assassinations because this falls into that category. When J.M. Karaoke was killed, it caused problems. When Tom Mboya was killed, it caused problems.
Yeah.
Real, serious problems.
Yeah.
When Msando died, and we know what was at stake with the elections, it then became political. It wasn't just some government official or an employee of the IBC died. No, it became political. But the question that keeps swelling in my mind is this. Why him? Because given the job that he had, in all sincerity, he could easily have been sacked.
Yeah, I mean, you didn't need to kill.
No,
this
he
gentleman.
could have been sacked. Even if you have security of tenure, you can still lose your job.
Yeah.
And then let the thing play out in court.
We even get frustrated. I mean, we have seen IBC bosses, chairmen, and CEOs complaining that they are frustrated.
Yes.
That yes, you have the position, but you don't have the authority. I mean, you don't have the power to do the job.
But what is
you can
also
find yourself in a corner office, but with nothing to do.
But
other people doing the work.
But also, Akombe has claimed that there was not just threats on her life, but she had to get away because, given the situation that we had in the country then, her life seemed to have been in more imminent danger than the other commissioners.
Yeah.
And she has continued to speak about this matter of Msando's.
Of Msando's for quite a while. I saw the tweet.
Let me ask the question. When you have such a case, for it to be viable, should there not be information that you have that can be verified that makes this case stronger? Because a tweet is not information, it's an opinion.
Yeah. I think I saw the tweet here that says, today is the day that there'll be some demonstration demanding justice for Msando. So she says, on this anniversary of my colleague Msando's murder, could you take this up? And this is speaking to Nelson Harvey, the president of the LSK. Take this up as a case in public interest. As I have said in the past, I am ready to testify. So basically she's saying that I have information. I have information regarding the death of Msando. This is what she's claiming.
She has information. Let me ask the question. In all honesty, do you really think that the security forces who deal with the investigation in this country are incapable of actually finding out what happened? Remember, our MP for Gatundu North, is it North? One Mr. Moses Kuria?
South.
Why did they take him to the North? South. Has also made similar claims. On occasion, he has said, no, he is going to reveal those people who are behind Msando's death. So, is it that the tragic passing away or killing of this particular gentleman is now being fronted and being used by people whenever it suits their purposes for whatever ends.
Can you imagine what this is doing to the family?
Yes.
You forget that this person left a wife and children.
Yes.
And brothers and sisters and cousins. And, I mean, there are very many people to whom Msando is not just a name.
And this thing is still fresh.
It's still fresh.
And it's still painful.
And you keep saying, you know what, I know who killed. Come on, now if you know really who killed Msando, why not just say it?
If, you know the story we just read about this guy called Surur. This is a career criminal. He has been nabbed. Do you really think that a murder can be committed here in this country?
And it becomes impossible to tell.
For our investigative services within the police force to actually figure out? The answer is no.
No. And also remember, not just Msando, there was a young man, a young woman who was found dead next to Msando.
Yes.
This young woman was somebody's daughter, somebody's
Or the
sibling.
parents were even featured.
And they absolutely
It's not a,
clue.
statistic.
Yes.
It's
This
a
is
person.
human being. The parents of this girl would like to know if you've got any information that can shed light into what led to the killing of their daughter. She did not work for IEBC. She had no IT experience. She had no connections in politics. Absolutely none.
The young lady's
She's
name
dead.
was Carol Ngumbu. And she was a KMTC student who was due to graduate.
Imagine.
That was her name.
She's not just any person. She's somebody with a name, somebody with a story, somebody whose life was cut short, snuffed out by some murderer. And then you sit there and you say, oh, you know what? I have information. Colleagues of Msando's are the ones who plotted for his killing.
You know,
You've even now brought in the issue of within IEBC.
no, that is what falls under the category of a red herring. Because at the time this happened, the then DPP, Karaiko Tobiko, appointed, at least he said he appointed, 3 prosecutors looking into the case. Now, I would be asking the question, what have the prosecutors done so far? Because these are the experts who know how to do this. That's the question I would be asking.
Yeah.
Not casting aspersion and saying, oh, I know this, I've heard it. There were people whose job
I'm
it
ready
is.
to testify. See, then now you go and tell
Yeah,
them.
fine.
Go and say, I gave them the information.
Would that not have made a better discussion?
Yeah.
See, the information I have,
I have given it.
I forwarded it
I've
to
forwarded
the
it to
relevant,
authorities.
Yes.
And if they don't follow it up, one day I can come and tell you what I said.
When what we're reading is consistently in our face, what you then feel is, why does this person keep highlighting themselves? Because when your name comes up, it is alongside Msando's. Msando's death is something that is still very painful. Very, very painful to very many people in this country.
Yeah.
But you attach your name to it, you also gain prominence. So I'm asking the question, what really is her end game? Because there are very many avenues. And telling us that the forces that we have within this country, whose job it is to deal with such matters, cannot deal with it, that is not entirely true. Why don't you give them the information and then say you gave them and they've done nothing about it?
Is it relevance?
Every death of every citizen in this country is relevant.
No, I'm saying is this the action of Dr. Rosalina Kombe just seeking relevance, wanting to stay relevant from faraway lands?
Eric, as far as I'm concerned, she cried sufficient crocodile tears at the time, and I was inclined to believe that indeed her life was in danger, but she's very far away from that danger.
Yeah.
Okay, and in that whole saga is this young lady, Carol Ngumbu, and Msando who lost their lives.
Yeah.
Everybody else who's in that commission is alive and well.
Yeah.
Others even left the commission up and are prospering as farmers. Okay? So, if indeed she is as sincere as she'd like us to believe she is, take the information that you have, give it to the relevant authorities, and stop this tweeting, unless you're tweeting about the information you give the authorities and the information which they've done nothing about. Yes. But that that's a tired story. It just brings up painful memories that one can do without.
And saying my colleague,
No.
really.
The memory of Msando.
If at that point also that you knew that the people who had plotted to kill Msando were still in office, while you continue to serve as the boss of that organization, because as a commissioner, you're the boss of the organization. You continue to serve as the boss of that organization for months after Msando was killed, and yet you knew who had killed him, then you also have a lot to answer.
But you see also, if you listen to the things that are reported as her having said, she herself doesn't seem clear. In such a situation, that will forever leave questions in my mind of what actually happened.
I thought you said you knew.
That's precisely what I'm saying. So it begs the question, what are we dealing with here? Somebody who understands that you can remain relevant and your question becomes valid because of something that is still bothering the nation, because it is bothering the nation. And so long as you attach your name to it, then your relevance...
Yeah, you get a headline.
No, an entire headline.
Get a headline in a
national
daily.
paper.
Yeah.
Yes.
People remember you. People remember that, you were here and you left because you had such a clean conscience. You opted to leave.
And yet, there's something even more
Well,
important.
2 days earlier, you had claimed that everything was okay. Come on. Let's get to the top of the hour. Today's proverb.
Today's proverb is, in my mind, a very interesting one. Again, it's an African proverb. If your mouth turns into a knife, it'll cut your lips.
That's an interesting one. If your mouth turns into a knife,
it'll cut your lips.
okay. That's a very interesting one. That's a very interesting one. You'll hurt yourself.
Yes.
With your own sharp...
Yes, you will. Yes, you
tongue.
will. And you can guess where I'm going with this one.
Clearly.
And utterances.
Clearly. Good morning. It's now 7 o'clock. Everything seems to be okay for now, but I'd imagine in a couple of minutes' time, the people who wanted to go up country towards Nakuru and the rest, towards Maimahiu into Narok and Kisii, towards on Mombasa Road, going down anywhere on Mombasa Road, Thika Road, anywhere out of town, those roads will start getting busy at some point because the people who are still asleep now, maybe they're having breakfast, they'll be leaving shortly. So for now, the roads are clear. If you wanted to go anywhere to Narok or Masai Mara, you'd be doing okay now on Maimahiu Road. Should be clear down the escarpment.
But haven't you found it interesting when people travel, Eric, that they all seem to want to travel at the same time?
Yes. People leave at the same time. You'll find that traffic peaks around the same time.
Yes.
Because everybody decided, I think the best time to leave is 8.
Yes. Oh, and it's nice and early.
Yeah, it's early. There'll be no one else on the road.
You don't even get before you even leave Westlands.
Traffic.
You encounter jam.
Traffic. Well, let's find out what's happening in about half an hour. But if you've got anything that you'd like us to know and tell other road users, let us know. 0719 012 600 or Spice FM KE on Facebook and Twitter.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial.
2.5
In the
minutes
room,
after 7
we
o'clock.
have...
Thank you very much for tuning in to Spice FM this morning, 94.4 in Nairobi. We also broadcast to Mombasa, Kisumu, Nakuru, Eldoret, Nyeri, Malindi, and everywhere else in the world on www.spicefm.co.ke and Spice FM KE. We live stream the show on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Yesterday, we were having a conversation in the 9 o'clock hour with the head of Amnesty International Kenya, as well as Ms. Patricia Mudeo, who is the MCA from Mlango Kubwa. And this was regarding the incident at City Hall where she was assaulted by police officers. And we also played a clip by the CS for Interior, Dr. Matiang'i, who was raising questions of why is it that we keep having violence at City Hall? I mean, we keep having skirmishes after skirmishes. Police having to go and lob tear gas. People who are elected leaders going to, raise a fracas in their own place of work, at the assembly, at the county executive's office. Why do we keep seeing this? What do we need to do to disarm the MCAs? So yesterday, the CS decided to walk himself to this city hall to try and understand. Is it the air? Is it the tiles? What is it that drives people to violence? And they decided that a police station will be built at the county assembly. Right? As Fred Matiang'i said, he'll be seeking direction on how to deal with the city affairs from the National Security Council.
That, to me, is a very sound statement.
How so?
It's sound in the sense that he's going to ask security experts to advise him on the best way forward. But the question I want to ask is, are we saying that we do not know how chaos normally erupts in these august houses right across the country? We do know politicians are surrounded by goon squads.
Yeah.
Start there.
Yep.
And these are people who will be commandeered, will be commanded, will be directed to disrupt meetings.
Yep.
They'll be commanded to take people hostage. They'll be anything that you want them to do, they will do. And for it to have lasted this long, it means it is something that is accepted. People talk about it, complain about it, but have you heard of a policy to disband all these youthful groups of people whose functions are very clearly known? Have you heard?
No.
The answer is no, you haven't.
No.
So when somebody says he's trying to figure out what exactly?
But also, look, what is the issue here? The issue is that conjurers and MCAs have been throwing chairs at each other forever.
The issue here is not that they have been throwing chairs at each other forever. The issue here is, why do they feel that this is the manner in which they should address issues? Why? Why? Because from time immemorial. And do you ever see any action being taken? Again, no.
But, okay, so why I'm asking that question is because I'm thinking, what kind of violence have we seen at City Hall and all the other county assemblies? MCAs in a scuffle as they try to grab the mess.
Yes.
They throw water at each other. They throw chairs at each other. Have you ever heard of a shootout inside the assembly?
Never. I've never even heard of a gun being drawn.
A gun being drawn
Never.
inside the assembly?
Never.
Have you ever heard the kind of violence that you hear that these MCAs were...
Shot somebody? No.
Or even clobbered so hard that they spent weeks in hospital?
Those chairs are cleverly thrown over the heads of most people. And the punches usually miss. If you find any recording of somebody actually being punched, it is rare.
It's very hard. It is
not.
It's going to be very rare. But here is an incident that happens on Tuesday where an MCA who's seated outside the chamber hall is assaulted by police officers. It's captured on video, and the police officers are holding heavy batons, what Irungu Houghton called electricity poles. And they're also carrying guns.
Houghton is a very fertile imagination.
Those things are the size of electricity poles.
Those things are massive.
They clobbered this lady. She was admitted to hospital. She had visible bruises.
She was injured. You know, Eric,
the issue that we are dealing with here is not how police conducted themselves, is how MCAs always conduct themselves, that we have to set up a police station at the assembly. I am absolutely flabbergasted at what? Why do we need to set up a police station at City Hall? Why? Explain to me, what is it that has happened recently that would require police to be constantly present at the city county assembly?
Eric, this discussion about the seniority of the gentleman who was pictured holding Mheshimiwa Mudeo's neck, pushing her to the ground, that story is lost.
It's lost. It's gone.
That story is gone. And this is a commissioner.
Yeah.
We even have the name.
It's a senior person who came from Vigilance House.
It is a senior person who actually began the perpetration of violence against this lady. And the others seem to decide they just joined the chorus.
Yep. So, we are not dealing with a situation where we are talking about City Hall and the city assembly. This county assembly was so devastated and so damaged that we need to do repairs.
What is unruly?
At county assembly.
The unruly behavior here is from the policemen.
It's the police.
not the MCAs.
Why do we need to have a police? What? How can that be the response of the government that, you know what, this thing is so serious, man, we need to set up a police station? Why do you need a police post at county assembly? I am not understanding why we need and then instructing the newly appointed clerk to make sure that nobody has a gun here. Disarm everybody who has a gun at City Hall.
No.
Why? Was there an incident where a gun was drawn?
Eric,
Are we responding to an issue where there was a shootout at the county assembly which endangered very many people? Like
the
what is
process of being licensed to carry
a firearm
in this country
is clear.
It is not only clear, it is difficult.
Yeah. In fact, Matiang'i himself came and reviewed those rules and said everybody who owns a firearm, first of all, return it. Apply afresh.
So
and now we are saying that how we are going to respond to an issue of an MC, a woman leader being clobbered by police officers, is by disarming anybody who has a firearm in the county assembly.
Not only that, setting up a police station within.
And set up a police station. And instruct that no firearm shall ever be
Eric,
allowed in. Where is the firearm story coming from?
360 days in a year, how many times does violence erupt or does chaos? How many times?
At City Hall?
Yeah, how many?
Yeah.
In all honesty.
10 times? We are seeing an increase in terms of scaffolds and
it's not even
skirmishes.
10 years.
Yeah.
It's not even 10 times, sorry. In a year. Does that warrant this heavy-handedness that we're seeing? The answer is no.
Even the kind of scaffolds that we see. Okay, so we see scaffolds. In the recent past, we've seen scaffolds. We have seen scaffolds where MCAs have stormed into Beatrice Elachi's office. She responded with spraying something and then they were complaining about, mafirifiri commercial. We have seen that. We have seen scaffolds where, like now, this one, where we're trying to gain entry into her office again. We have seen that. Have we heard of this scaffold degenerating into that the Speaker of the County Assembly was beaten, hospitalized, or any member of staff was beaten, hospitalized by these people who were marauding, brandishing firearms? Have we heard of a shootout? Was there any firearm that was fired on that day?
Or displayed?
Or even displayed?
No.
Have we heard anything like that?
No.
So how do we respond to that with people have firearms in this place?
Actually, that is...
What is Matiang'i responding to?
Why is he changing the conversation?
Yeah.
Because what we're witnessing here is a conversation being changed.
This is completely shifting the narrative.
It has moved completely. No, my friend, this is a seismic shift. It's moving the discussion from police brutality now to MCAs, who, as everything we've read, they did not even foment any chaos. They simply... And this lady was not anywhere near Elachi's office. She was a floor below.
And the photo on the front page of the Standard this morning shows, so Matiang'i went to visit this place, accompanied by the director of the NMS, now Major General Badi. He was also accompanied by the Inspector General of Police, senior-most people. All right? Just these two can give him enough security advice. He doesn't even need to go to the council.
Well, there are MCAs who've actually questioned why he has to escalate it to the national level when this is something that doesn't need to go that far.
Yeah. And when he was there, tear gas was lobbed.
What has actually happened is this. Our CS for Interior has actually opened up a can of worms that is going to question very many things about the way he's managing his docket. Are you telling me that this is how in the future we are going to be treating matters of... Forget police brutality when people are demonstrating, doing... This isn't it.
Yeah.
This was a lone lady sitting.
Yeah, but you and your colleagues
in the premise, yes, in the premise where she works there.
Yeah,
sitting, not moving, not just sitting. You assaulted.
The skirmishes are happening upstairs. She is downstairs.
Yes, then she is assaulted, and then suddenly, the MC has answer of a problem. Well,
and you're calling it perennial.
Actually,
there's a perennial problem at City Hall. That now we have to walk there. Come, Major General Badi. Come, Inspector General of Police. Let's walk and see what is the problem.
It's a nice photo up here, but spin doctoring just took a new turn.
This is absolute nonsense.
Yes,
complete and utter nonsense.
So
whatever Matiang'i and his advisors think that they are responding to, this is not the issue at hand. No, the issue at hand is police and their heavy-handedness. This is the matter that they need to address.
You know,
as they stood here, we expected them to have heard, we want to issue a public apology over the behavior and conduct of our officers. It was conduct unbecoming.
What my eyes were open to yesterday is where it is that junior police officers in our service get their ethos of violence from. I arrested my case. A commissioner,
yes,
behaving that way in public. I said, okay.
He had missed the action. He wanted to participate and feel. I mean, when you...
On that young lady who was half his size.
Yeah. He had missed the action. He remembered, he was reminiscing his older days when he was a junior officer and the things that they used to do. And he was wondering, these young people of nowadays, these police officers, hawajui siku zetu.
We would not have left a woman sitting on the bench alone.
Yeah.
This is what we would have done.
Let me show them.
So that and I imagine what we will do to criminals if this is what we do to innocent people. No. This narrative, unfortunately, has to be addressed in the manner that is required. No.
Yeah. This one, I call total BS personally. I say, Matiang'i, whatever you are trying to do here, this is epic failure. You, IG Mutiambai, Major General Badi, this is whatever you think that you create, putting up a police post at City Hall is absolutely unnecessary. It's not a solution. City Hall does not require, this is wastage of public resources.
But there is a police post not very far from there, if you think about it. If you look at where City Hall is.
At KICC, there's a police post.
Precisely, that's what I was going to tell you. It's just across the road.
Yeah.
Across.
At KICC, there's a police post. And not so far from there at Parliament, there's a police station.
Yes, and these are all next to each other. Next, literally, next.
This is wrong. In fact, even at International Life House, there's a
very
police
clear
post.
One. Yes.
It's 7:15. This is the Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. Let's take a look at the weather shortly and then continue with the big stories of the day. Good morning. Okay, in the 7 o'clock hour, how is the country looking like? 13 degrees still in Nairobi, but it's going to be a mostly cloudy day, rising to 23 degrees later in the day. In Kisumu, right now, it's 17 degrees. It's going to be a cloudy day as well, rising to 28. In Njeri, still very cold at 13, going to be rising to 22 later in the day. Let's go to other parts of the world. In London, at about 5 a.m. in the UK, 18 degrees right now. It's going to rise to 34 degrees with clear skies. New York, It's about midnight right now, 28 degrees Celsius, very hot night. And, at 22, it's going to rise to 28, partly cloudy day. Paris, 6 a.m., 20 degrees right now, and it's going to be rising to some degrees of 39 degrees, very hot days. In Johannesburg, South Africa, 7 degrees at 6 a.m. in Johannesburg. We expect it to rise to 21 degrees and clear with periodic clouds throughout the day. Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, our neighbors are waking up to 24 degrees. They expect to have a partly cloudy day to rising to 29 degrees. So other parts of the country, Nakuru, 12 for now, going to 23, clear skies. Kakamega, partly cloudy day, going to rise to 26 degrees, but right now it's at 15. Very cold morning in Eldoret at 12 degrees Celsius. We're going to have a partly cloudy day there, rising to 22. Let's see how the weather improves as the sun rises across the globe. Good morning. All right, so at 20 minutes after 7, other big headlines. There's a very big headline here today in the Standard City.
Yes.
Rebellion in Uhuru Raila strongholds.
Well, that's what the headline says.
It's the same story as, the same narrative as yesterday's.
Yes, it's like a continuation of the same narrative, but in the nation, a little corner somewhere they say, Raila betrayed us at a time of need, claim MPs. Lawmakers from the coast gathered together, and the statement they made amounted to this: our ODM senators from Luo Nyanza threw us under the bus and left us on the horns of despair. Thanks to our fellow marginalized brothers and sisters, we survived the vote. Kilifi North MP Owen Baya.
What are they griping about?
Well, they felt that they needed support with the discussion that has been taking place in the Senate with regards to the division of monies for the counties. And they felt that what was being proposed by the handshake partners was disadvantaged areas that they consider marginalized, and they consider themselves to be part of the group of people who've been marginalized. And they felt that their allies in Luo Nyanza, the senators, should have supported their cause, and they feel they did not support their cause.
This is basically Raila's backyard of Luo Nyanza.
Yes.
Should have
supported
stood with him.
Yes.
Because we stood with your brother and
allies,
voted for him.
But what is of interest is this. The discussion has gone beyond just that. They have gone forth and said that they are in the final stages of actually not registering. They have their own party, and the discussion becomes a discussion because they now want to move away from ODM as coast MPs. That is actually the discussion.
Kwani, were they tied to ODM in the first place?
Well, the ODM, many of them, you will find actually members of parliament who actually got their positions on an ODM ticket. So they now want to, they're clearly stating that they want to move away.
So they feel that joining this national party has not served them, so they want to form their own regional party that will address and advocate their regional interests.
Oddly enough, there already exist regional parties at the coast.
Of course.
And it isn't one or two or three.
Yeah.
So it isn't that there's an absence of such a party. Let me begin this
The
discussion.
only thing that they've got to remember is that for any political party to be registered, it must demonstrate that it has presence in at least 24 counties.
Yes, they probably have done that already. But I would begin by saying that when a group of people get together to complain about something, we should pause and ask, actually, what are they saying? Because they must feel they were wronged. So what is this wrong that they feel? It cannot be dismissed. It must be understood.
Okay. From where you sit, what do you think they're saying?
They are saying that the sort of support we need in such cases, And the way in which we can alleviate the poverty and the situation that was brought about by this marginalization that our regions have felt over the years would be by the injection of money. So anyone who denies you money automatically seems to be saying that they are working against any development that you may be seeking. Okay? So such a person of necessity cannot be referred to as a friend.
Okay.
Yes.
It is instructive to note, City, as you talk about all these things, that these are members of the National Assembly.
Yes, they are.
Who are talking.
Yes.
They are, who's this who's speaking on their behalf? Kilifi North MP Owen Baya.
Yes.
He was accompanied by Michael Kingi of Magarini, Jonas Mulolwa of Voi, Aisha Jumo of Malindi, Paul Kahindi Kaloleni, Khatib Mwashetani of Lungalunga, Andrew Mwadime of Mwatate, Muhammad Ali of Nyali, Benjamin Taya of Kinango, Sharif Ali Lamu East, and we have not heard any of the senators from the region.
Well, start by saying not every MP at the coast joined
Not every MP at the coast joined them.
Yes.
And not a single governor from the 5 counties in the coast joined them.
Well, why don't we just throw in the senators as well who are involved in this discussion?
Yep.
Because they are the ones who ought to have felt this even stronger because they were the ones arguing for this case. But if we go back to the presentation that we had yesterday and we look at the representation of the voting pattern of their own senators, I would beg to ask.
The senators actually voted against the proposal.
Yes, they did.
And the amendment as well by the majority whip.
Yes, they did.
Shindio. However, and this is where my thinking is that these guys have seen a bandwagon that they can jump onto and use this bandwagon to make their own personal noises.
It's good.
Because this is not a conversation that, like you keep saying, this is not a conversation that started yesterday.
No,
this
it
is not a
didn't.
conversation that started last week. The issue of a formula has been there from the beginning of devolution.
Yes.
The issue of this third basis formula has been there for more than a year.
Yes.
These particular MPs have not caucused or even done any rallying around to support their agenda. Yesterday, they were not even talking about, so what is it that we would like? They have just realized that, okay, this conversation has been primed to show that we are being marginalized and we continue to be marginalized. Tunaendelea kugandamizwa, kunyanyaswa na serikali kuu na haya makabila mengine. Okay?
Kwa ufupi watu wa bara.
Kwa watu wa bara wanatunyanyasa. And they have basically just seen the bus come to the bus stop. They've entered the bus and continue to preach inside the bus. This is not because they really care for whatever the formula is saying, in my opinion.
You know, this discussion didn't even begin last year. Huh?
Yeah.
It began in 1963 and prior to it. Because at that time, it was felt that there were 2 tribes that were dominant, the Luos and the Kikuyus. And they were in Kanu. Kadu brought in what you call the smaller tribes.
Yeah.
I'm being deliberate with my use of the word tribe here. And their thinking was very justified if you look at it and you understand what they were talking about. But what is of significance is, what do you think happened that made them change their mind and join Kanu? Something must have happened. They must have seen something. They must have been convinced.
They must have been convinced that,
Because-
it serves our interest as
Yes.
well.
The very person who then later became the vice president of the country and became the president for 24 years was one of the strong people in Kadu.
Yep.
What did he see? We now have within this country something called devolution. It is like the dream of Kadu come true.
Yep.
You actually have regional governments with powers, with funds going to them on a yearly basis, huge sums that have hitherto not been seen.
Yep.
And their purpose for nothing else other than to develop those very regions. Not in any other region. There's no competition. It's just your own region.
Yep.
So that dream of Kadu, in my opinion,
Was realized in 2010.
it was. So one could actually argue that Kadu had the last laugh. So now, come the division of spoils. 2 things come to mind. It is one thing for MPs to state their mind and their feelings. Good. The question I would ask is, do the electorate agree with you Because at the end of the day, if you are 7 MPs, you're just 7 MPs. And if you're voting, those are 7 votes.
Yep.
Do the constituencies that you represent agree with you? Do they support your view?
Yeah.
Because if they don't support your view, then it is just 7 of you and maybe some close associates.
I find that this conversation is bringing out what we say is politicians, and they framing a conversation that suits them. All of them. For example, now the bigger conversation is that it's Mount Kenya that is pushing for this formula. Okay, that one has been debunked. Let's say any county that stood to gain from this, right? And it's advocating for this and saying, you know what, we need more money so that we can serve our people better. We can still bring the conversation of the little money that you've received, how well have you utilized it? And this cuts across whether it's the populous counties or the vast counties. How have you utilized the money that you've received?
You know what has spurred on this particular discussion, because it's been a discussion that has gone on for some time, have been writings that are attributed to one Dr. David Nduh, for instance, who in one of his postings brought forth an interesting perspective. He said, if you're talking of resources, let's take, for instance, okay? If we look at resources and we want to equitably distribute them, Turkana should stay with their oil, meaning let them control it. The coast, let them control
the ports.
Yes. And you can go on and on and on. Now, this argument presupposes that we don't have a situation where counties actually own resources. We do. The Mara is actually owned by Narok County. Now, so if you want a case study, in my opinion, I would say, why don't we look at a situation where a resource, a vast resource, such as that one, is owned by a county, and then compare it with a resource that is nestled in one county but run by the national government, and see how we balance the benefits. Now, what you will find is this. The issue will not be who owns it. The issue will be who controls it and what their interests are. Not where it's nestled. Because the assumption is, if the coast province controlled the port, then the livelihood of the people of the coast would change drastically. And I would say, think again.
They would have the money, and so they'd be able to offer services in a better way. All the money that's generated at the port, right, would be utilized by the county assembly and the county government of Mombasa, for instance, for the benefit of the people.
That is the narrative.
That is the narrative.
That sounds good to the ear, and we hope. Now, let us bring it to this is now magic thinking on our behalf. Let's bring it to reality. 1.8 trillion over 7 years divided by 47 counties. How has that been managed? Because it brings, if you're talking about resources, good. Let's take that argument and say, fine. Have our leaders shown adequate capacity to actually do this thing they keep talking about, looking after the interests of their people? Because we have an opportunity. It started with CDF. And when you go to places where CDF was used, you saw changes. You honestly saw changes. We went forth, we now have a county system and even more money. Where it has been utilized, you can see changes. So, are we saying that everyone who is in a position of authority has the ability to do these things they keep talking about, or are we just politicking?
It's a lot of politicking from where I sit. It's a lot of politicking. 28 minutes to 8 o'clock. Let's take a look at the traffic. What's happening on the roads now that you are awake and you want to leave, go up country for the long weekend? You tell us if you find any trouble on the roads. Good morning.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah.
You're listening to Spice FM.
All right, so let us know what's happening on the roads, because so far you are not saying anything that's negative happening on the roads. All the reports that we have so far, that the roads are smooth sailing everywhere this morning. Mombasa Road is good. So is Thika Road. So is the Wayaki Way getting out of town. So we want to look at those major roads that lead out of town. This is one of those weekends where we expect people will be traveling. It's a long weekend. Maybe people may want to go up country for a bit and then come back later on Monday. What time do they want to leave? Let's find out. If you find out anything that's happening on the roads, you can let us know on 0719-012-600 or tweet us at SpiceFMKE. So there's an update here that Egerton University has taken the initiative to follow the health guidelines and conduct their graduation virtually. Nobody is expected to be traveling to the university. Celebrate with your families at home. Okay, anything else that you think we ought to tell other road users this morning? SpiceFMKE on Twitter. Looking at the big story today is this one saying that there's a rebellion in the strongholds of President Uhuru Kenyatta and ODM leader Raila Odinga. There's a group of parliamentarians from the coast who yesterday called a press conference and they expressed their disappointment and they felt betrayed, especially by their brothers and sisters from ODM party who come from other regions, especially Luo Nyanza. And they say that when it came to the issue that's being debated in the Senate on the division of revenue and this new formula, the ODM guys should have voted with their counterparts from the coast.
They said these are now enemies of the coast.
These are our enemies.
Yeah, they've declared. The thing is, I wouldn't trivialize their sentiments. Because when people feel they have been marginalized, you must understand why they feel they've been marginalized. You may not think so, but that's your thinking. You see, for the longest time, there's been a widespread perception that many people believe is the truth, that certain regions of this country have benefited more than others. Now, I was of the opinion, and it appears like I was mistaken when I was in a minority, that this is what devolution sought to resolve. So instead of waiting for the national government to come out and dole out things, you were given...
You got the national resource brought to you equitably for you to decide what is important.
Yes, to determine you. And it was cascaded to the level where even MCAs had an allocation which they had a say over.
Yep.
So if you're talking about resources being brought right to the basic fundamentals of a governing structure, it was done so. And devolution even threw in individuals who are administrators within those particular setups at the local level. Now, when you then have a situation where the issue still becomes the county or the national government who is to blame, then that's where I pause and say, no. Can we have this discussion again, please? Because, no, it's not the discussion we had previously.
Yep.
We have a different discussion here because resources have been given. So what discussion are we actually having right now? Is it that it's not enough?
Yep.
If I'm to quote Kiraitu Murungi, he says that when you look at this situation, the argument seems to be, it's like cutting the legs of a tall man to make him the same height as a short one. Very graphic.
Kiraitu is very good with being graphic.
Yes.
It's like cutting the legs of a tall man to make him the same height
as a short one. Yes. That's what you're trying to do. The argument, in my opinion, and the sentiments, if they are indeed real, in my opinion, they should be supplemented with what we have received has done this to alleviate, and our people, this is what we've done for you. And if this is denied us, because it's a question of being denied, then it means that this thing that we have been doing, will not be able to complete because of this.
Yep.
I don't hear that discussion.
Yep.
I don't hear that discussion. The discussion I hear is what is ours is being denied. This money is given for a purpose. For the last 7 years, they've been given for a purpose. And if you feel there is going to be a shortfall that you're not receiving, then it means there's some development, there's something that you ought to be doing, what is it?
The conversation, to me, appears to be sticking to the same old broken record, right? Two things that will always stick out: the tribal card and the marginalization card. The tribal card and marginalization card have now come together in this particular one, and they form one large and big conversation. One is that this conversation is being framed to show or to point that the big tribes are getting all the money to the disadvantage of the small tribes. Number one. Number two, that we have forever been marginalized, and we continue to be marginalized by these people who have the resources, who have control of the national cake, control of the national resource. If you listen to what these MPs were saying yesterday at the coast, they are talking about the same thing. They are saying, you know what, we feel we have been marginalized for so long and our brothers should have come to our aid. It's a trump card that they keep using. And it's a very easy message that has been sold to the people for so long.
It has been sold and bought.
And now it's just something that you just bring up again. You know what? We are being marginalized. It doesn't matter what we have done. It doesn't matter. Our failures do not matter. Let us create an enemy, and the enemy is an external enemy.
You know, the issue of marginalization is actually true. There are areas that, given the way we thought and the way we tried to implement Sessional Paper number 10,
Yep.
it actually disadvantaged others. But there's something here that we also must bring into the discussion. It is, when you talk resource, there's a fundamental resource here that is crucial. It's called human resource. Because it's human resource that helps you galvanize these other material resources in a way that can be of benefit to you. So if the resources available to you did not or have not focused on building that human resource, you will forever be disadvantaged. It is not really complicated, but you will be. And if you look at people who've understood that simple principle, they've understood the importance of ensuring that the human resource capacity is continuously increased. Why is Kenya a powerhouse in the region? Not because we have oil or because we have the port. No. It's human resource. We have a serious human resource capacity.
Yeah.
And the argument then moves forth to yet establish, yes, there has been marginalization. Now, let's look at the role of leadership. I'm not going into history. I'm going into recent history. These current leaders that have brought forth a viable discussion, what have they, in the time they've been in power, done specifically to ensure that this marginalization is reduced with the resources they have? It's a question that must be asked. How have they ensured that their people actually benefit? Because they're not without resources.
They'll argue that if you went to some of these counties, for example, if you went to Kilifi, you'll find a lot of projects that had never been seen by people are now being seen.
Like?
They'll argue that now you may find in some areas in Kilifi County, or let's say in Tana River County, or in Mandera, people who had never seen a tarmac road.
Yes, they
Now
hadn't.
they've seen a tarmac road. People who had never seen a health facility near them now have a health facility near them.
But you see, the moment you bring that argument, then how exactly do you hold on to that argument of marginalization again? Because what you've just described is the eroding away of that so-called marginalization means that anything that would alleviate the impoverished situation that you are in is maintained.
Yep.
But you are saying it's being alleviated. So
No,
how
the-
then do you remain marginalized?
So the argument that they would continue having is, you see, for a county such as this one, we needed to come from 5 health facilities to 350 health facilities.
True.
We have moved from 5, we are now at 70. What's the gap? 350 minus 70. And if you reduce the resources now, then it means that it'll take us longer to attain the 370.
True.
Whereas you're taking these resources and they're going to another county that already had 270 out of 300 that they required.
It's a viable argument. It's a very, very viable discussion. But you see, I do not discount the discussion of marginalization. No. My issue here is this. I've gone beyond that and I've said, yes, Parts of this country were marginalized right from independence, even before independence.
Yep.
They were.
Yep.
And it takes a long time for that gap to be filled.
Yep.
It's not something only Kenya is grappling with. Why do you think other countries, even in the West, have something they call affirmative action? It's because they've understood. If you don't give some other people undue advantage over the others, they'll never catch up.
They'll never catch up.
They'll never catch up.
True.
So the argument is valid. I've gone beyond that argument and I'm saying, all right, we've heard the argument. Can we discuss the actions that are required? And can we peg it to the actions that you could have carried out as now the leaders?
Yeah.
That's why I've taken the argument. Because in the absence of that action, it doesn't matter how many debates we have, there'll be no change. That's really what I'm trying to say.
Without a proper strategy followed up by action.
Yes, there will be no change. We'll keep
gonna be no
having the
change.
same discussion. And then one could argue it's a discussion you have so that you can keep enslaving your own people with a mindset that every problem they have is because somebody else, not you.
It's somebody else's problem.
Yes.
And this one I completely agree with.
Yes.
It's framing of a conversation that always removes you from the blame, shifts the spotlight from you to try and shine the spotlight on somebody else, whereas you are a part of the big problem. You, as members of the National Assembly who come from this region, you go and sit and look at the projects that are being budgeted for by the national government. You look at those and you see that maybe they're skewed, and they're not skewed towards you. You do not raise a voice. You pass that budget. You, as senators, you look at how much money has been taken to the counties in terms of devolution. Instead of arguing about the 316 and saying how can we progressively rise from 316 to half of the national budget going to the counties, you don't have that conversation. You bring it back to formula is the problem, and this formula is actually not the problem. It is Uhuru and Raila who are the problem. It is Uhuru and Raila who are the owners of this. And they want to continue doing the same thing that they've been doing over the years, which is marginalize our people. What have you done as leaders over the years, over your tenure in those positions of National Assembly and Senate? What have you done as governors, as MCAs? What have you done to alleviate this? What have you done to shift the conversation?
Do you know why I brought the discussion of somebody called Francis Bobby Tuva, who first became an MP for Malindi in 1963? Kadu ticket. Kanu came in. That man was an MP, I think, until 1988, when somebody by the name of Mohammed Badawi took over. Okay? Then there was a gentleman called Maida who took over. Then there was Mungaro. All right? Why did I bring in Bobby Tuva? Because I'm talking about the previous century. You're talking about the 60s, 70s. This is a man who had been able to galvanize his people, his constituents, into a body, into SACCO, so that they were already owners of commercial enterprises as early as that. And then I threw in the example of Gema, a commercial enterprise. Then I threw in the example of Luo Thrift. I am sure there are many other organizations that I could point to, but I point out these three. They were leaders who were really forward-looking, and they realized, we can actually uplift the lives of our people.
Empower them.
You can. Now, these things may not have worked out.
Not handouts. Not
No.
Participatory empowerment.
Thank you. Let them be part and parcel. Man, it is a long time ago. My question is, have we moved an inch from there?
From this point.
Should this not have developed to become something bigger and better and more advantageous? And remember, these were homegrown solutions. Homegrown.
Yeah.
And when they start homegrown, they move. I'm reminded of a certain company that emanated in Italy called Benetton. The way they did their work is they actually engaged locals, what you call cottage industries, to help produce their own products. And Benetton were known for the colors. Man, they had vivid colors, beautiful colors. And as they grew, so did the cottage industries, so did the people who helped support that business. Homegrown. Think of any business. It doesn't matter whether you want to talk of Microsoft. Just think of how they begin and where they start off with before they become international. I am saying the capacity to think big, we had it and we saw it. And we've seen it. And we continue to see it. Why have these not been built on? Why do we build the development of our people on complaints and whining? Why? Even Yes, it is true you are marginalized.
Yep.
But we're not in 1963.
It is true we're marginalized. It is true that what you're receiving is not enough
It is
to bring your region or your
Eric,
county.
it's
to that
never
level.
enough.
It's never going to be enough.
Economics is a discipline because it understands that resources are scarce,
Yeah.
and because they're scarce, you have to plan for it.
Yeah.
It's never, ever enough. It will never be enough.
And yet here we are.
And yet here we are.
11 minutes to 8 o'clock. It's a situation amidst Kenya's biggest conversation. Would you like to participate in this conversation? 0719 012 600. Let's take a break. Eight minutes to 8 o'clock. So the headline is talking about a rebellion in Uhuru Raila strongholds. And of course, now we've talked about the Raila stronghold of the coast, where MPs are even threatening to walk out of ODM in droves and form their own political party. The central Uhuru stronghold is quoting just one person who is a former MP.
Kabando?
And this is Kabando, who tweeted a series of tweets yesterday talking about the highest form of betrayal. He says the President Uhuru's reign is shaky. We have said it before, only now the whispers are all over. The ship is fast sinking. Mr. President, act boldly, dissolve the entire cabinet, focus COVID-19 economic cushion remedies on joblessness, food, rent. Masses are in stress, is what the Kabando was saying. The story also quotes, of course, what we saw in the headline yesterday, in the Star headline, the PS for Foreign Affairs. Just because it's Kikuyu, so this also talks about the stronghold. Is there a rebellion? Is there a rebellion in Uhuru and Raila's backyard?
The rebellion is in the headline. Actual rebellion? Remember, who do you think the voter listens to when it comes to being voted in and when it comes to the party politics we have in this country. Who do you think the voters listen to? Is it you? Is it your development record? Is it the party you belong to? Is it the party leader? Who do you think the voter actually listens to?
So you're asking who is more influential to the voter? The local MP or the national leader?
Yes,
this
that is the
Raila
question I am asking.
Musalia.
And Kalonzo, that's the question I'm actually asking. In all honesty.
Who, okay, for lack of a better word, who owns the voter?
Yes.
Yeah.
Who do you think the voter, when it comes to voting, who do you think the voter is going to listen to? This is one of those situations where even as people threaten they want to leave, if it's a normal political negotiations, it's understandable. But this is where you would advise, please look before you leap.
Chunga sana.
Because people have leapt to oblivion. These aren't decisions that you make hastily. It is good to champion the causes of your people, but it's even better to ensure that you actually do something to change the course of the life of your people. Words come cheap and they're easy.
I think I have a problem with the headline that there's a rebellion.
There is no rebellion.
We've seen instances where you could say, well, for it to be called a rebellion, it has to be consistent over a certain period of time.
But this word,
Where you're even seeing people, agitating, and
Eric,
they even go ahead and form a party, and now you can say there's a rebellion. There's
Eric,
something that needs to be addressed.
even when there was a discussion in the Senate, this word rebellion came in.
Yeah, because there are MPs there are senators who did not vote
Yes.
according to what they were expected to have voted based on where they come from.
Yes, or according to the parties that they supposedly belong to, meaning
just because
there was a position.
Kipchumba Murkomen did not vote with the amendment.
It is now interpreted as being he went against it.
He went against.
Yes,
or Sakaja
yes, they
coming
said
up with a proposal that's different from what is being pushed by the whip.
Anti-Jubilee sentiments.
Yeah.
Now, so
is that a rebellion?
Well, as I said, the rebellion is in the headlines. And really, this whole week, there has been a consistent portrayal of what's going on in the Senate, and now this.
Yeah. And tying it to the national leaders.
Yes. And specifically tying it
specifically saying that these are the epic failures, these are the people who should be giving guidance. It's as if you don't expect that the people in the Senate would have their own mind, or the people in the Senate would be able to debate unless they're told how to debate.
And when they have their own minds, a new word comes in. Betrayal.
Rebellion.
Yes, rebellion,
and
which is a form of betrayal. Yes.
What?
An agenda, if you ask me, is being furthered. Somebody has decided that this is the view that the Kenyans must read about.
Yep.
Kenyans, there's no rebellion.
Yep.
These are just politicians doing what politicians do best.
And the other one here that has also been pushed for a while is the issue of disbanding the cabinet and reconstituting the cabinet. This headline of reconstitution of the cabinet, especially the Star, has had that.
It's been for some time.
For some more time. And now here we are. Kabando has called for a reconstitution of the cabinet.
I think he's entitled to say what he wants, but perhaps he should actually vie for, in 2022, the seat of the presidency. Anybody can vie for it. Why doesn't he vie and then make sure that he brings about these lovely changes he's discussing? Let's see whether the people of Kenya agree that he's the sort of person who can bring about these changes. Because Msema Kweli in our politics is go to the ballot.
Yep.
Let's see how that works out for you.
Seek the people's mandate.
Yes, because that is what... Why do you think political leaders are who they are? Because they have a mandate. Kalonzo Musyoka has no official position in the government.
Nope.
But he is a powerful leader.
Yes.
Because the people support him. Raila Odinga, the same. People support him. Mudavadi, the same. People support him. I was about to mention Wetangula, then I remembered that he's actually a senator. But he's a senator because the people supported him. Yes.
He's the leader of a national party.
That's the litmus test. So these gentlemen who apparently are being reported as rebelling, please go and refer to the litmus test in your various constituencies before you take this leap.
Yeah.
It may be a leap into oblivion, and that is something you don't need.
The conversation that's being spun in public domain about, this, whatever is happening in the Senate, reflecting on what's happening nationally, and also saying that the handshake is now seriously in jeopardy because the disagreement in the House could crack the handshake.
I don't know. Am I reading from the wrong script? But this discussion is still going on. There are people who voted yes who are saying, I think we should have voted no.
Maybe it's trying to force a conversation in such a way.
Yes, there are people who have voted no who are saying, no, we should have voted yes. This is a good discussion because as the discussions go on, we have something which I now consider beautiful. You know what? Somebody is actually bringing forth the argument and saying, look, the reason why I'm seeing this is ABC, but that makes sense. Yes, and what I'm saying is this. Actually, come to think of it, I hadn't seen that.
Yeah, it's a better idea.
Yes.
A better idea keeps emerging every time.
And if they keep emerging, then it means that when they sit to vote again, remember the other lie that has been perpetrated is that the counties don't have money because of this stalemate in the Senate. Not true.
Not true.
Not true at all.
Today's proverb, as we come to the top of the hour.
Today's proverb. If your mouth turns into a knife, it will cut your lips.
If your mouth turns into a knife, it'll cut your lips. Your own lips.
Your own lips.
By your own mouth.
By your own mouth.
Which has now become your own knife.
Which is cutting your own lips.
It's cutting your own lips. Keep it right here. Thank you very much for tuning in to the Situation Room. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. It's now 8 o'clock. Let's take a look at traffic shortly. Okay, so what's happening on the roads? In Utawala, along the Eastern Bypass, there's an accident. You expect, of course, that the Eastern Bypass, people would be using the Utawala route, that Eastern Bypass route, to try and head out onto Thika Road and outwards. So there's an accident along the Eastern Bypass at Utawala. Be careful. What's also happening is that there is an accident. That's at past GSU. It looks quite horrible. It involves a bus. And I don't know what's happened to this bus, but this one doesn't look good at all. Somebody's complaining about the traffic lights on Gong Road, saying, are there any worse traffic lights than the ones on Gong Road at the Junction Mall? That's a recipe for accidents. Otherwise, Gong Road is moving smoothly this morning. Now, let us know if there's anything that we ought to talk about, apart from this accident at Utawala on the Eastern Bypass. Anywhere else that there's an issue on the road, let us know. Spice FM KE on Twitter. Good morning.
This is the Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have...
for tuning into Spice FM this and every morning, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. is the time for the Situation Room. But Spice FM broadcasts live for 24 hours a day on radio and on digital platforms, including our website, www.spicefm.co.ke. So we enter the second hour of our conversation this morning, and well, there's a lot that is happening around the country, especially today being a public holiday. We are reflecting conversations that happen locally and internationally, what is happening globally as well. America wants to is having that conversation about the elections that are coming up in
they are having that
November.
conversation, and what is of interest is that it appears that the utterances from their president seems to point to him wanting elections to take place in a certain way at a certain time.
Yeah.
And he's already building a discussion that if it doesn't, then the election will be considered flawed. So it's like somebody who's setting himself up to actually...
to reject
the
outcome.
And to protest the outcome of... Did this guy visit our country at some point?
All these Americans have been to our country at some point.
Okay.
We are a good case study for everywhere in the world. Malawi, Baroda, our case study. Now America is trying to see, okay, how is it that you want to conduct your election? So the issue of contention here is that when you ask people to go to a ballot, you are expecting them to visit a polling center, to pick up a ballot, to cast their ballot, and to go home. There'll be queues. There'll be touching of surfaces that have been touched by other people. There's basically...
There'll be proximity. When people are queuing.
Yep. And all that, in the times of COVID-19, is what we are trying to avoid. So the idea is that the way they're going to conduct elections is a way that they always do. So it's not the only way that the Americans vote. This is the only way that we vote. But Americans have other ways of
They've
voting.
had alternatives because even people who are not within the country have been able to vote.
Yeah.
Yes.
So this is the what's it called? The main method that's going to be used this time. The one where they send mail in, right?
Mail in. Yes.
The mail in system. So you go, you pick a ballot, you tick whoever you want to vote for, you send it via post, it goes, and they then collect those those ballots, and they count the votes.
Are they going to mail it physically, or are they going to mail it online?
Physical. It's got to be physical. That's where the issues are.
So that it means you actually literally physically count the votes.
Yep. And there's an actual record of these are the votes that we received. This has been conducted before. So Trump is basically arguing that if we do this, already we have seen flaws in the system.
And which system doesn't have flaws?
Yep. So he's saying already we have seen flaws in this system. In terms of New York was doing the same with the primaries, the Democratic primaries. It has taken them very long to count those and also to verify. So did this person send their fill out their form before the deadline or after the deadline? Did you receive this email or mail before the deadline or after the deadline? And if it's delayed in the system to arrive, would you say that, you know what, we closed the receiving of these ballots yesterday, so any new letter that comes through the post office, we shall say no, without considering what has happened in the system?
Or were they within the precincts of the post office at the time, the deadline? Because even with voting booths, this is always taken into consideration.
Yeah. If you're on the queue,
that's it.
You stay on the queue.
You're on time, yes.
You're on time. So what happens in this particular situation?
So why is this suddenly becoming a complication when the rules don't seem to be that confusing?
when which rules don't seem to be that confusing?
I'm saying
theirs.
Yes.
It's because they've been confusing.
What is confusing about them, in your opinion?
Well, it's the delays. You see, there always appears to be this issue of the question is, so where was this person at this time? Has somebody tampered with the delivery? Remember the way we used to have issues with before we started counting votes at the voting station, at the voting station.
That was a part of our evolution, yes.
Yep. And we used to transport ballots. So there was an issue of ballot stuffing. There was an issue of a car goes and disappears, and then it arrives after 2 weeks later. And you're saying, you know what? Or even what we saw in 2007, Kivoito sitting there saying, I am looking for my returning officer. I can't even get him. So I don't know the result from this constituency. I cannot declare the results from that constituency. We have no clue.
We have displayed some really evil ingenuity. Remember at Kenyatta University, there was an entire wing where all manner of ballots and all manner of things were actually found.
Yes.
So, and then there was the argument in this country that some ballot boxes arrived in the country already stuffed.
Yeah.
Now, you see, the moment there's something wrong, man, it lends itself to all manner of stories coming out. And those stories are just as believable as the first. So, again, in my opinion, the real problem would be, how do I sift between the truth and something that is...
exactly.
Yes, and what is manufactured? But the moment room is provided for doubt to be cast, that's it.
So what happened yesterday was that the president tweeted, and he was raising issues with the system that's been used. I'm looking for that tweet actually from Donald J. Trump, so we can talk about what we are looking at directly. Donald Trump, the real Donald Trump. You know, he tweets so many things in a day. Well, there's one time when he was saying we are going to win the 2020 election. And he's saying, well, when he started tweeting this, he was very happy because he started bringing what he now calls the lamestream media to finally start talking about the risks to our democracy from dangerous universal mail-in voting, not absentee voting, which is totally supported. The absentee voting is what they do for the people who are not in the country, but the mail-in voting, which is another system, is what he's saying. I have an issue with this. I'm going to get that. Mail-in voting is there. That's what he says. Mail-in voting is already proving to be a catastrophic disaster. Even testing areas are way off. The Democrats talk of foreign influence in voting, but they know that mail-in voting is an easy way for foreign countries to enter the race. Even beyond that, there is no accurate count of what's happening on the ground.
But what is of interest is this. He's calling for a postponement of the elections.
Yep.
But his own party doesn't seem to agree with him.
Yep.
This particular rubber has actually met the road.
Yep.
They do not share that view of his. Yes. Now, when your own party doesn't share your view, the Democrats were certainly not going to share his view.
Of course.
But when his own party doesn't share the views, what does that tell you?
Yep. Tells you that this is not a universally accepted position. Well, he is saying, look, guys, maybe it's something that sometime it's about time we start having this conversation about this. How shall we safeguard this? I think what they ought to do is look back and say, how do we safeguard the mail-in voting system to ensure that it is not infiltrated by whoever infiltrated the last election anyway?
And they're also saying that, you see, it is not Trump's, he doesn't have the mandate to decide.
It's not his decision.
It is Congress. It's not him.
It's not his decision. Unfortunately, it's Congress, which is dominated by the Democrats, who are looking very eager and keen to have him leave office as soon as possible. And how the polls are showing right now is that their candidate is leading in the polls. So they, of course, would like to have this election. In fact, tomorrow. In fact, watch out, November is far. Why don't we just do this election?
September here.
September. You know?
Then we have time to go for Christmas.
So yes, we have enough time to celebrate this thing and bring in the swearing in, so that it doesn't happen next year, it happens this year.
Don't you see the similarity of political processes right across the world?
Yeah.
Is there any system in the world where the political processes does not bring out contention? None.
None. And there's none that is completely foolproof.
It can't be.
But the level of trust of a system is also very important. You see, the conversation that has happened in America over the last 4 years what it has done is that it has eroded the trust of the people on the electoral system. Because what you have said is that a foreign power was able to infiltrate our system and manipulate the system such a way that whoever we have in office is not the person who legitimately won the vote. This is what the conversation has been happening in the last 4 years. It has been
peddled very successfully for the last 4 years.
Very successfully.
Yes.
So you've already eroded the trust in the system. And then when Trump comes in and does what you guys have been doing, just riding on that wave of we don't trust the system, he is likely to get very many people to side with him.
He is likely.
And he has brought in that word of the people who are saying that the last election was infiltrated by foreign powers are the same ones who should be looking at this one. This is even much easier to infiltrate than the other one. The other one, you're talking about individual human beings queuing at the ballot. This one, you're talking about some mail-in system that is...
You know where this discussion really gets interesting, huh? When you have your own president helping cast aspersion as to something that Americans hold dear.
Yep.
The integrity of the system,
Yep.
the fail-proof. They believe, one, the system is superior, and when it gives out results, the results are credible. Suddenly, the head of your nation is actually telling you that may not be the case. Indeed, yes, it casts aspersions on the Democrats and their leadership. But my friend, this particular knife cuts both ways.
It cuts both ways.
Yes.
It cuts on the leadership of America. When the leadership of America, starting from the Congress to the Senate to White House, was discussing the veracity or the authenticity of the result 4 years ago.
And that discussion took center stage.
This is what they were doing. This is the kind of seed that they were planting without, maybe they were realizing it, but they thought that they would have enough time to mend it, but they have not made any attempt at mending that.
Political emotions, unfortunately, sometimes are devoid of the sort of logic that we're trying to inject into the conversation now. And people are partisan. You have a party, but what I find of interest and of note, when you have your own people who support you and your party beginning to differ with you, then, my friend, there is an imminent change. That wind has changed directions. Because these are your supporters.
Yep.
These are the people who are going to try and garner support and votes for you.
Yep.
And they're already saying no. Look, man, we don't quite agree.
We don't agree.
We don't quite agree.
Let's go ahead and.
But look at it. Is it not similar to what the newspapers in our country have been peddling? Rebellion, betrayal. They're peddling it.
Yep.
We have a healthy debate in the Senate that is showing something that house ought to have, an independence of thinking. People deciding what they think is the right thing to do.
Yep.
Not the thing that favors me. The right thing. But it's being read as betrayal. In some corners, it's being read as rebellion. And yet, that's what that house is supposed to do. It's supposed to debate. It's supposed to bring out all these salient and obvious issues around such a topic so that those of us who consume that information can see this thing has actually been thoroughly discussed. So when a decision is arrived at, you actually have very little doubt. You will know, look, this thing was really seriously thrashed out.
Yeah.
It was.
Yep.
By the time they agreed to do this, even the back and forth in such a situation is a good thing.
Yep.
You see, this is where now the norm comes in as a bad companion. Why I'm saying this is, when people believe that if your party leader says this, or the people in power who you should go by what they say, if you indicate in the slightest that you have a difference of opinion, it cannot be read in any other way other than it is either rebellion or betrayal. And yet, that may be something that will actually help the party.
That is what is important. You ought to have to hear different voices coming from this party. Yes. By the time you now sit down and agree that this is what is a common position, you've come from different divergent
Eric,
opinions.
look at ours. You see, they've even brought in something that was in the discussion, the BBI.
BBI is going to collapse. BBI is going to...
But it tells you our thinking and how even our senior politicians, like those in the Senate, view politics. It is servitude that you've been brought into to obey and to follow. For party politics, it is important. But it doesn't mean there shouldn't be a discussion. It doesn't mean that there shouldn't even be a differing of views.
Yeah. Which is why I stand with what Trump is raising. Have that conversation. Assure the people that this system, whatever system you come up with, is going to be a safeguarded system. Remember, the people who lost to Trump 4 years ago demonstrated for weeks across the country, saying that their vote had been stolen.
Yes.
There were demonstrations. For the first time in a very long time, people were contesting the results of an election publicly. Not just going to a court, but publicly through public demonstrations. The electoral system in America is going through some serious
The electoral
questioning.
system is being questioned.
Yeah.
And that, my friend, doesn't make for a good platform from which to have the next election.
Exactly. 17 minutes after 8. We'll continue this conversation. Let's join me in 071 012 600. Okay, so here is the weather around the country today. Nairobi, well, I've already told you it's going to be around 23 degrees at the highest point, but mostly cloudy today. Kisumu also mostly cloudy, hitting a high of 28 degrees later in the day. Right now, 17. It's still warming up. It was 13 earlier in the day. Njeri, which was 12 degrees some 2 hours ago, is now at 15 degrees, heading towards that 22 degree peak through the day at partly cloudy skies, and Malindi partly cloudy skies as well at 28 degrees later in the day. Mombasa is going to be partly cloudy, 28 degrees as well. Nakuru sunny, a sunny day at 23 degrees. So sunny but 23. That basically is just a cold day. 15 degrees in Kakamega, partly cloudy for now, and also rising to 26 degrees later on in the day. And let's take a look at what happens other parts of Africa. Kampala, Uganda, mostly sunny for now, 20 degrees, expected to heat 26 degrees later today, and cloudy, some cloudy areas. They are cloudy in Lagos, Nigeria, expected to have some slight precipitation or rain at 27 degrees later in the day. Dar es Salaam, 29 degrees later in the day, partly cloudy right now at 8 in the 8 o'clock hour. Is 25 degrees. We'll be looking at other parts of the world in a future weather forecast. For right now, it's 21 minutes after 8. All right, so we're talking about people's trust in the system, in an electoral system. For very many years, Americans have always voted on the scheduled date. They have an election that's due to happen on the 3rd of November this year. With COVID-19, this election is expected to be a bit different in terms of people are not going to be queuing to vote in very many parts of the country. There are very many parts of the country where people are going to do what they call the mail-in voting system. Yesterday, President Donald Trump tweets and says, you know what, with this mail-in voting system, we run the risk of having a fraudulent election because we have seen what has happened. Mail-in voting is already proving to be a catastrophic disaster. Even testing areas are way off. The Dems talk of foreign influence in voting, but they know that mail-in voting is an easy way for foreign countries to enter the race. Even beyond that, we don't have an accurate count.
You know, that is actually not true because in 2016, 1/4 of the votes cast in that election were through the same system. And the people who validate these systems have looked at it and they said there's actually no significant fraud that you can actually see. And they do have data to support it because it's been done. This isn't new. It's not being invented. It's not being tested.
It's not a new system.
No. It's been there. The discussion that people are encouraging is how do you tighten it so that indeed you lessen the opportunity for actually ensuring that there is no fraud. Remember, it isn't as though you go to the post office to post. No. There are specific ballot booths that are put for you to post in. Specific. So you're not mixing it with normal mail. It is just for voting. That's all it is. And it's all over the states. So you know exactly where to go and post. Now, what I'm wondering as a layman, when you say it is open to infiltration, so what are you saying? You're saying that all manner of foreign agents can actually just come and also post in their own votes to sort of like confuse your votes. Yes, they can, but I thought that was the whole purpose of having security and intelligence officers, number one. Number two, at some point if you're going to vote, surely you will know that there are a certain number of voters in a particular place.
Yeah.
Anomalies can be detected. You can use whatever argument you like, but one you will arrive at, no matter what you do, is that there is no system that is fail-proof. There is no system that will be 100%. None. So the discussion should be, what is the margin of error that you anticipate?
What is it that we need to do?
Yes, and how would it actually affect the eventual outcome?
Yep.
That to me is a viable argument for discussion. Yes.
But that's the discussion that is raising.
No, that's not the discussion that is raising. Trump is saying, this one, it can't work. We have to postpone these elections because this one can't work. This one will lead us into problems that the US government has never seen in its life.
You know, his tweet here has not mentioned postponement of the election at all.
Actually, why don't I?
This is the tweet. Mail-in voting is already proving to be a catastrophic disaster. Even testing areas are way off. The Dems are talking of foreign influence in voting, but they know that mail-in voting is an easy way for foreign countries to enter the race. Even beyond that, there is no accurate count. Has he said delay the election?
Yes.
No, he hasn't. Absolutely not. He has not said delay the election.
Not in the tweet, he hasn't. But what brought about this discussion was that he had suggested that the November presidency should be laid over alleged fraud concerns.
Yep.
Not in the tweet.
Yep.
But the debate arose because he had suggested.
Because he had suggested it before.
Yes.
He has said, okay, you know what, you guys, we're heading into an election. Maybe we could think about this. It's about delay and get it right.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
If this discussion had been brought about by Joe Biden, would the pushback be the same?
I highly doubt it. The pushback may have come from diehard Republicans and supporters of Trump because it is their mandate to oppose anything that anyone who's in the opposition proposes.
Trump obviously would have come out and say, look at Sleepy Joe, he's already afraid.
He would have found some
running
derogatory
scared.
things to say and all manner of things, yes. But, you see, the discussion around anything that Trump seems to utter somehow raises a lot of heat. So when it touches on something that the Americans hold sacred, that they, like the elections, that thing is going to generate a furnace. It's not just heat. It'll be something that can smelt the hardest of substances. And that's the heat we are seeing here. It is because the way Trump has said it and the way he has said it.
Yeah.
Because what he has said, if you just look at what he has said, consider postponing the election. Well, why don't you consider it? But that's not the pushback you're getting. No, the pushback is as though he had said, I have dictated that we should postpone the elections. He didn't do that.
He didn't do that.
No.
He actually, later he even held a press conference at the White House where he was telling reporters, even despite the pushback from his own people in the Republican Party, he said, you know what, I'm still standing by this position. We need to interrogate this system. And he said, I don't want a delay. But he claimed that counting of the mailed ballots could hamper the reporting of final results for weeks and create the possibility of a tainted election.
Think about it. So what are these people reacting to? Because what he said is clear. So what are they reacting to?
They're reacting to the fact that he's Trump, number one. And then number two, now they are reacting about everything else. Number one, Trump has said no. Okay, what has he said?
But of significance also is what has he previously said and then what has he previously done. So essentially they are reacting to the uncertainty of what the president might do. Yes, not just say they figured this guy will say anything, but do. So it's like you're anticipating what he will do and you're reacting to what you've anticipated.
Already.
Yes, and it hasn't been done yet because as I said, what he has said is clear. And so you look at the reaction and say, okay, this is what he has said. So this reaction doesn't seem...
It doesn't go with this.
No, not quite. Quite.
Why are you suggesting that we delay an election? I don't want to delay. What I'm just saying is let's look at this. But
the man has opened a debate.
Previously he has said, can we delay an election so that we can have people who can properly, securely and safely vote?
Safely, you see, behind this particular background that we are talking about, there was the issue of masks. And there was the issue of COVID.
Yep.
Well, does it exist? Doesn't it exist? Just a Chinese disease. Pompeo says some really crazy things. Then the wearing of masks. And then what has followed hot on the heels of that is the escalating numbers of those who are actually being infected by COVID.
Yep.
People are going to look for someone to blame.
Yep.
And they're going to blame him.
It will fall squarely.
Yes. Now, against this backdrop, forget other things that have happened before. Forget the discussions around the interference of a foreign power, etc. Now, against this background of something that is influencing and affecting the lives of individual citizens on a daily basis, and the government doesn't seem to be able to even control it as well as it ought to, then come the elections. What they're reacting to, so Trump seems to be thinking that he is going to get elected again, or he wants a situation that will... Now, the reaction, we can't have this guy, we don't want this guy as president again. So you're reacting to Trump becoming president, and yet all he has said was, can we discuss this? I would argue That
And
he-
already it has gone into the point of saying that he's preparing himself and his supporters to reject the outcome of
yes,
an election.
yes. Now, did you see how far this has gone?
It has been
But
pushed.
you can see the history and how he himself
Has
has
participated
helped,
in
yes,
this.
in bringing this situation upon himself.
Yep. But I'm also saying that he is not the only one who has participated in this. The political leadership in America has, for 4 years, participated in eroding the trust of the electoral system.
They've gone all out, Eric.
All out. They have
All
said
out.
that
There's
we had a
nothing- no.
national election
Actually,
that was infiltrated by a foreign
Actually, the
country.
question is, what have they not said?
Infiltrated by a foreign country. We have had a national election, not just a national election, but starting from party primaries, because, I mean, he got the ticket after going through an entire party primaries where it was clear he was the winner. So what you're saying is that even the Republicans themselves did not see it, but their party primary was infiltrated. It was manipulated, such that this guy got the ticket. Then beyond that, despite facing a very strong opponent, somebody who has been a senator, somebody who has served as Secretary of State, somebody who has been the First Lady of America, somebody who has name recognition, not just in America but globally, facing such a person, he even won. No, it was because it was infiltrated and he was aided by some foreign powers. This system of ours is so easy to manipulate from outside. And then you're saying we are going into another election. And you have not addressed much of bringing back the confidence of the people with this system. So he has just basically done what our local politicians do, like what we are seeing with with Muhammad Ali and his fellow MPs from the coast. See in a wave, ride the wave.
Yes, you do. But remember what I said earlier about looking before you leap. Huh? Be careful about what you begin, because in a few months' time, you will want to be re-elected. And there are people who will want the same thing you have.
Yeah.
And they aren't MPs, they aren't saying anything. Please be careful that what you start and what you say isn't going to be fuel for those who are going to be fighting against
Your
you.
enemies.
Because they are going to use it.
Yep. It's
They
your
are going to
enemies.
use it. And you who now wants to present yourself as a champion of the people, believe me, when enough twist is given to, or enough spin is given to the narrative, you will suddenly become the biggest enemy that the citizenry of your constituency have ever seen. It is not difficult for this to twist. We've seen it twisting simply because of alignment of political parties. The ushering in of multipartyism presented this picture to us in a way that nothing ever has. How people expressed their need to be heard, their need to have what they think is important given the focus that it is. We saw this.
Yeah.
And the political parties gave them that particular avenue. And we saw what happened. Registered parties in this country, I think slightly over 60. Right now, as we speak.
Yep.
Okay. So if you're talking about political parties, we have many.
We have many.
What have they actually helped change?
27 minutes to 9 o'clock. Take a quick break. Let's take a look at traffic. What's happening on the roads? What's the situation like on the Eastern Bypass where there was a big accident earlier this morning? Well, we'll tell you that shortly. All right, at 26 minutes to 9 o'clock, what's happening on the roads? Well, we only have this report about the crash that happened on the Eastern Bypass. It was a serious head-on collision between a Matatu and a canter along the Eastern Bypass past Astro inbound. Casualties were already being removed from the two vehicles and being taken to seek medical attention. Serious accident, so that has caused big snarl up. And you know, this Eastern Bypass just needs one small mishap and you will be there for long. So if you are intending to use the Eastern Bypass, please avoid it. And if you are in that traffic, just be patient. Anything else that you think we ought to know about and talk about is this is where you can tell us. Spice FM KE on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram. Good morning. America heading to an election and the conversation back and forth whether the Democrats have the upper hand this time, whether Trump has the upper hand this time against his own party, just like he did the last time. And now let's reflect that with what happens in the country as well. We see this all the time in our political system.
We do.
Politicians issuing a statement today just because it sounds very right and okay for them to issue a statement today.
It seems to serve a purpose at that point.
Serves a purpose at this particular point in time.
Yes.
And then
something happens. It's called time and space. It can work for you or against you. And usually you can't tell which is which. And then suddenly there's a twist. And my goodness, the very thing that you wanted for your enemy is what's facing you. Case in point. One Mr. Mudavadi. There was this issue of the senator for Kakamega, who also happens to be a member of the ANC party. It was felt that he was disloyal. Was he rebellious or was he a betrayer? But
or all those combined.
Yes, the matter went before the tribunal.
Rebellious, betrayer, disloyal member.
Yes, the matter went before the tribunal that deals with such matters. And they said, no, there is no issue. Then came the issue of elections within the ANC. Now, the really interesting and bizarre twist is now, what is now being challenged is not Malala. He's free.
Him is okay. He's a member of the party.
He's a member of the party. The tribunal has sorted him out. Now, the person who has a noose around his neck is the leader of the party. Because when you're looking at the election, the timetable and what should be done, it is being alleged that he has overstayed his mandate. He should actually legally no longer be chairman or leader of ANC because his term ought to have come to an end at a certain point in time and that time has lapsed. An election would have sorted that out had he been re-elected. But now that he has not been re-elected, it is him who has a problem. So essentially, he's illegally in place.
Okay. So, all right. So he was an interim leader for some interim period, after which they should have held
an election.
Some elections.
Not held.
Election not held.
Not held.
So let's question the legitimacy of this. Because no communication has also gone even to the Registrar of Political Parties from the leadership of the party saying, you know what, because of COVID, we've not been able to. So we'd like an extension of. Nothing like that has happened.
No, not that we know of.
As far as legal procedure is concerned, ANC does not have a leader.
No, it doesn't.
Or whoever it is, it's not Musalia.
Well, there isn't one. Now, this is something that one must actually observe and look and determine very, very, very carefully because the political twists and turns. I like giving the example of one Kijana Wamalwa.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yep.
Who supported one President Kibaki, all right? Then came something that even him in his wildest dreams could never have anticipated. Two things happen. Jaramogi Oginga Odinga passes away.
Yeah.
His deputy at that particular point in time was one Paul Muite.
Yeah.
Paul Muite leaves Ford, Kenya, decides to form a new party, him and Liki. Okay? Fine. Who is next in line? Kijana Wamalwa. Time goes on. he and Kibaki are ambling along. Something that, well, I couldn't have seen, others may have, called Kibaki Tosha comes into being. Suddenly there's this huge alliance, and Kijana Wamalwa is right there. He becomes the vice president of the country by virtue of what we then have in play. Now, I call it the role of chance. Politics has a lot of it. We've had people who became members of parliament because their fathers had been members of parliament and they passed away. And they were given that position. We've had people who passed away.
Do you think really Kijana is his role of chance? Did he have a huge part and role to play in this?
Yes and no.
Let's look at it this
way.
way.
The position where you become the head of a party, that is a role of chance completely. When somebody passes away, you didn't anticipate.
You're left and then you...
Yes, that's the role of chance. Things happen that you didn't have any direct control over. That's the chance bit.
Yeah.
I wasn't talking about anything else.
But then you take advantage of that and you go with it.
Yes, but it's a role of chance, but you've understood it. Now, that role of chance is something that appears to many politicians, but they never do what Kijana did. They don't seize it. Now, a good politician understands those things and seizes them. And that's why you find some politicians change, and you think, why do they change? They probably understood that change is what will help me here.
Yeah.
Yes. And sometimes it isn't even logical, it's just instinctive.
Totally instinctive.
Sometimes it's just that they want to move because they are fed up, but then chance favors them and certain things happen.
And they find a place to move to.
Yes, exactly. Or certain things happen which they couldn't have planned, which then favor them. This happens a great deal in politics.
Global politics.
Yes, it does. And the oddest of things that you couldn't have anticipated, suddenly happen, and you look and you say, my goodness, how did this turn about? How did this...
So you end up at a position where you're like, you mean? I actually think about it, and I remember Nick Clegg.
Yes.
He was once deputy prime minister after who was the prime minister?
Not Thatcher.
No. Just the other day, the guy who lost the Brexit vote.
He's called it was it was
David. Well, him. So there was an election.
Cameron.
Yes. There's an election. There's a hung parliament, and his party has to form an alliance with another party. And it so happens that the Lib Dems have some numbers that would be enough
useful
to give Cameron the position of prime minister. Takes it up, and of course Nick Clegg now becomes the deputy prime minister. Since then, we've not even heard of Nick Clegg. Forgot about him. Complete, total.
If you want to take this thing to another level, look at the drama that has been unfolding with the prime ministership of Israel. Their current prime minister, what's bedeviling him is that has happened now. It happened a long time ago.
Yeah.
That man is in court. Charges are being brought against him. And it is hampering his particular position and his fight for being prime minister. The thing about politics and the thing about time is that someone can come and claim and say they understand. The answer is yes, you understand certain things. You can never claim to understand everything.
You cannot.
No. What you understand may be there, but there's a lot more you don't understand. And there's exactly nobody else who can even claim to understand it. However, an astute politician will know, that's where the instinct comes in, will know that a particular move may not be wise at this particular moment in time. And those wise ones, usually what they do, they keep quiet.
Play Uko.
Yes, you don't hear them uttering anything. There is nothing you can attribute to them. Now, if you want to give the perfect example of such a person in this country, it was President Kibaki. Hardly spoke, unless it was absolutely necessary. Even before he had the accident, Kibaki was not a man who spoke. And to him, talking all the time, hardly. Hardly.
Such that when he spoke, his words had weight.
My friend, you could remember that there was nothing to confuse you about what he had said previously.
Yeah.
Because you look previously, he had said nothing.
There's clarity of what he said.
So you grasp onto this one here. You see? Now, because of that, he didn't confuse the things he did. So you could clearly say, oh, this is what he did.
Yeah. He's had a consistent stand on many issues.
What, apart from his opponents constantly said, this man seems to sit on the fence. Kibaki never sat on the fence.
So he was a calculator.
He was very calculating.
And manipulative.
And he understood what was what. And what became before what and what was important. He understood it perfectly. And he did not see the need to talk about it either. He didn't. And so he kept quiet most of the time. But you'd see things happening. You didn't hear talking much, but you'd see things happening.
So the best way to actually wield power is that. Is that what
It
you're saying?
is in a sense, but sometimes it's necessary
But
to talk to
also
your people
it's
so
important
they can
for
hear
you to
you.
be, yeah,
Yes.
to stand out.
Yes, and talk to your people and let them feel that you're part of them so that your voice is something that they're used to hearing. It's called leadership style. Now, Trump chose the abrasive style.
Yeah.
And what you're seeing are the consequences of his style.
But also that style also is what propelled him, you could say.
I would argue that his party propelled him.
His party was working against him. Remember, Trump is not even about roll of chance or anything. How did Trump end up with that ticket in the first place? By the time Trump was actually getting this ticket, how many people were behind him? The Republican Party's ticket.
Eric,
as I'm saying, that abrasive, he was all out there.
You have brought in the very discussion that now is akin to our own situation here.
Yeah.
Who actually took Trump in? It was the voter. He appealed to a certain demographic, and he appealed seriously.
And he was ever present in their face.
Yes.
He was constantly
He
there.
represented something that they could resonate with, something.
He was saying what they wanted to say, but they couldn't
And
say.
by the way, they still do. It's not as though they have stopped resonating. They still do.
It's the same thing with Obama. He represented a constituency that felt, you know what, things that we could not have done, we have not been able to do over very many years, things that we've not been able to say over very many years. This man, he represents our dreams, our hopes, our aspirations.
Actually, and there was that particular demographic of people who didn't even bother voting.
Yep.
Obama got them to vote.
He made them feel that there's the audacity of hope,
Yes.
as he called it.
Yes. So, and he didn't win once.
Change we can believe in.
Twice. No, Obama broke all rules. All.
First term.
First term, this.
Senator, first. How?
An African, twice. And you know very well the vast majority of voters in that country are Caucasian.
Yep.
So which means they voted him in.
Yep.
Yes. Now, that isn't a role of chance. Now, that falls under the category of time. You see the time element I kept bringing in. Let me tell you why it falls under the category of time. Things happen over a period of time. People evolve. They don't even realize how fast they're evolving in their minds. And they have a need. The man comes along and appears like this guy can meet. This guy.
I think there was a bigger project Obama. This is my conspiracy side of it.
Please,
there was
conspire.
a bigger project Obama. It's around the same time that you start seeing TV shows that have a black president. It's about the same time. Remember the 24 series?
Yeah, but those had been there for some time.
For how long?
And they help. Oh!
How long? Because
My
we're talking
friend.
about a certain generation within a span of 10, 15 years where there's the whole opening of people's minds that you can have
You are talking
person who is
you
black,
are
who's the
talking
president,
about
who's loved.
what you're trying to
And then there's somebody who is coming into politics, and suddenly they have authored 2 books, and they're appearing everywhere, and they have a lot of visibility with the people, and the word that keeps popping in here and there softly is presidential, senator, presidential.
You know what you are calling? You are talking about psychological manipulation that the media and certain intelligence forces around the world have been accused of. And you would have a point that the minds were prepared for change simply because they were constantly fed onto this. Yes, indeed. But in the absence of a person who actually presents it live to you, okay, it would fall flat. But also remember, they had Republicans, a certain type of Republican. They had Democrats. They had WASPs. They'd had the full array of presidents. They even had a Catholic, something that was unheard of. It would never happen. Presidents of America were supposed to be Protestant, Episcopalian as they call them. Black, no one had foreseen. But remember, Obama wasn't what you call a typical African American. He was actually African. Actually African. One generation African, meaning his father, then him. Not a history of 300 years. Yes. No matter how I twist this, the truth of the matter was all these things you're saying seem to have conspired to work in Obama's favor. The person that he was, the mess that he had. But then, man, that guy had a serious team. There are people who clearly went and understood and saw. But the question I would like to ask is, did his presidency help bring about Trump? Because two-term presidency was there, the pushback, and Trump's coming into power. Was it as a result of Obama being black, Obama being a two-term president? Was that a platform on which it was then possible for someone like Trump
to now come in?
Yes.
So it was the underside of, having this one oddity and then you can have another completely different
Yes.
oddity. So if it's possible for people to bring in somebody who's black, it's also possible for somebody who has never, ever sought elective office, never served in an elective position to actually become president.
It is possible.
Because prior to that, everybody else had at least served somewhere in an elective office.
Do you remember when Njeri Thorne once elected a polytechnic student to be the MP?
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember when Meru, they elected someone who just graduated from university to become the MP? These things happen. And it speaks of someone who represents to them hope.
Yep.
What happens later may be different.
Yep.
But it tells you that electorate is open-minded enough to say, no. We know the sort of
They're
politician.
things that they don't think of.
No.
Some things are beyond.
Yes.
Yeah.
We've been represented by this sort of people. Look, thank you, enough. Let's have something that is a bit different.
Yeah.
But you also see it in our party politics where individuals get elected and they've gone against party lines. Completely. Meaning, it's an area where a certain party is dominant. Someone doesn't quite go with a party ticket to the election and still wins.
Indeed. 10 minutes to 9 o'clock. Let's take a quick break. This is the Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. Join the conversation as well. 0719-012-600 or Spice FM KE, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. Felix Tanga is saying, is DJ Trump running scared? Well,
No.
we don't know.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise.
You're listening to Spice FM.
5 minutes to 9 o'clock. That's a conversation we're having about politics and our politicians. Seeing a comment here saying, DJ Trump will not leave office even if he loses. He will pull a Laurent Gbagbo. Hey. Do you think that is, because that is what is in the media, that because Trump has raised the issue of postponing the election from November to a later date, he's basically preparing his constituents, he's preparing everybody to, I'm not going to accept this election.
Eric, consider that the election is held in November and he wins. So that is also a possibility.
Yep.
Then what? Because...
Do you expect the Democrats not to complain? Do you think there'll be issues of another round of wind assisted by Putin? Or
I think we will hear such a ruckus like we've never heard before. The anger, the angst, it'll come pouring out. Because there are people who have difficulties accepting that Trump is their president, and that the man will be elected yet again to be president. Some people will,
it'll be difficult.
Drama, the sort of drama that I think has not been seen in that country.
So they'll start saying that he was talking about this mail-in voting system.
Knowing very well that he had already...
He's manipulating it.
He has already... Yes, that is the discussion that will come in. He knew what he was doing. When you have such heated divisions, logic and actually sound reason go out of the window. And people just take extreme positions and stick to it. Evidence be damned.
I think the most likely thing to happen in America, is if Trump loses, him leaving office. He'll raise issues. He'll talk about, you see, I told you guys. I told you that this mail voting, I told you I don't trust the system, but he will leave office.
Eric, them winning, do the Democrats have the psyche to actually win this election?
Now,
do they have the psyche to come out and actually vote?
That's the other side. The least likely thing to happen is the Democrats willingly accepting defeat again.
You see that happening?
My prediction is that Trump is winning again this election, right? Tough as it may be. Well, it looks like, the polls were showing us things 4 years ago. Polls. Do the Democrats have people who are willing?
Eric, I don't know how to read polls.
All out.
I don't even know how to interpret polls. So
those they're done by politicians.
I read. Yes, I read, but it's November. We are entering August, September, October. 3 months, and then no. I would wait until the end of September to try and determine whether there's any clear direction that is being shown in this. Right now, Eric, there's too much happening on this planet right now. Things that have never happened in our history, the history of mankind. And because of these happenings, things that we had previously thought as constants, we've already seen them not being constants, and others can continue being constants. And some of them, if they affect the livelihoods of people and they change overnight, it can change their perspective also overnight. So this one, there are too many balls in the air. Too many balls. Some need to settle first. When they settle, then in my opinion, I'll be able to say it would appear. And I will be as vague as possible. It would appear.
Yeah, the people who wait until the 89th minute to say, this team is winning.
If you ask me about
because it's been leading 2-1 or 2-0 for so long. There's still time. If the other team can still score 2 goals, of course, but call it CT.
Actually, it's because I understand politics to some degree, and I know the vagaries and the nuances of politics that I say. If you ask me about Kenyan politics, I'll tell you something different. I'll be more definitive.
From early on.
I'll tell you, even now if you ask me, I'll be more definitive. I can tell you, no, I don't think that will go in that direction. This is the direction that is going to follow. For instance, these MPs are going to fall in line.
These coastal MPs,
they will fall. They can form the new party. That they should. It's their right. And if people feel
After
they need
all,
a party to express themselves,
with them and she belongs to a different party.
Believe me, they should, because that is their right. And then the consequences which follow, they must also be ready for. And they must ensure that their supporters agree with them and follow them. Because if not, they will have signed their own ticket to oblivion.
Kitaumana.
Yes.
Top of the hour, today's proverb.
And it ties in with exactly what I'm saying. If your mouth turns into a knife, it'll cut your lips.
Hear ye, hear ye. Good morning. It's now 9 o'clock. There's a Moeshe story here. So someone is saying traffic police should have a human heart. Instead of coming and asking me why the engine had failed near Moi Forces Academy, this officer's argument was, kijana, unazima gari kwa barabara, almost ordering for a breakdown, and it was just a loose battery connection. Like, really? The first thing that you're thinking of is that this person has come here to break the law. Instead of just going and asking, what seems to be the problem, gentlemen? How can we help you? That's what he's saying. Anything else happening on the road, we still do not know yet. We just know that there was an accident at the Eastern Bypass near Utawala, and that has caused a snarl up on the Eastern Bypass. Other roads within the city, they are looking good. We expect that people will be moving out of the city this morning, going just, even if it's just for a drive and out and back. So expect the roads leading out of the Nairobi metropolitan to be busy at some point. But let us know what you see. Spice FM KE on Twitter, on Facebook, and on Instagram, as well as 0719 012 600.
This is the Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep,
2.5
controversial.
minutes after
In the
9
room,
o'clock,
we have
welcome to
C.T.
the third
Muga,
final hour.
researcher,
We have been
academic,
here since 6 a.m.
seasoned political
Eid
observer, a
Mubarak.
fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain
This is
times.
a day
Nduh
to
Okoh,
celebrate.
Nigerian
Sisters,
by birth,
all the rest
Kenyan
of
by
us
choice,
celebrate
communications
some
expert,
guys
Pan-Africanist,
enjoying
a
the day.
truth seeker
That
and
is what
believer
exactly
in
we're doing.
people power.
So we've been fighting COVID-19 now for how long? For 3 months, going into 4 months. Okay. And issues have emerged around COVID-19 and the management of COVID-19. And especially when it comes to seeking medical care for COVID-19. When you go to hospital, who pays the bill? Is it the government? Is it you? Is it your relatives? Is it NHIF? Is it your medical insurance? Who foots the bill? Is it all of them? Those questions have been asked, and those that have been unfortunate to actually get COVID-19 and require hospitalization have told us that you foot your bill, especially if you go to private facilities. Those that have gone to public facilities, and those are the main designated public facilities like the Mbagathi and the KU Teaching and Referral Hospital and the others in the counties, have said, well, I was there, I stayed for a while, and then I was let go. But initially, those especially at KU were complaining that they were having to pay, given a bill of 42,000 shillings because of just being accommodated for 14 days. As late as last week, or actually early this week, we also saw stories of people who are being given bills of 80,000 shillings and above in various government facilities around the country, in the counties. Who is paying this? We saw a story published by the Star last week, and we actually highlighted this story of somebody who was saying, I had medical cover, I have a medical card, I went and sought attention in public hospitals, I spent 24 hours seeking admission, with hospitals rejecting me. And eventually I had to cough out a huge sum of money to clear this bill. So why is it that we get to a point where it becomes your burden as well, and it's a global pandemic? The government is not helping you to foot this bill. Your insurance is abandoning you in this hour of need. NHIF, which is the public health insurance scheme, is abandoning you in this hour of need. It took the CEO to come and clarify that this is what we're going to do. We are going to cover some of these bills in public facilities, but not in private. Why are we getting to that point, City?
The question I would ask is precisely this. That is what we perceive as citizens who pay taxes, who have insurance cover, citizens who expect that other people ought to help us share the burden of health. But is that the perspective that the industry that we are speaking of share with us? Are they of the same view as us?
Who, the insurers?
Yes. The government's role in this
So
is
you're asking
clear.
whether they have a heart, like the rest of us?
No, I am asking what it is that determines the reasons they have for doing what they do. And in a situation such as this one, which is unique, completely unique, and unheard of before, what their role actually is. And this is the question that we must ask. And this one, sorry, Eric, we have to ask somebody who knows a little more.
We ask those that know.
Yes, not a little. In this case, ask somebody who knows a hell of a lot more than I do.
Okay. So let's bring in somebody who knows. His name is Harris Muiruri. Harris is the MD of Swift Life Insurance. Good morning, Harris.
Good morning. Good morning, sir.
Thank you very much for speaking to us. Welcome to the Situation Room.
Yes.
You've heard our introduction, Harris, and we're saying, look, I go and take medical insurance cover when I'm well.
Yes. Yes.
As insurance for if I ever fall sick. This
Yes.
insurance cover shall sort me out at that hour of need. Now you
Yes.
are in a global hour of need where there is a killer
Oh my gosh.
and you stand a chance of contracting
This killer.
And then you go to hospital and that thing that you paid some premium for tells you that, you know what, this is not one of those hours of need. So what do you want us to call this, if not hour of need?
Wow.
Harris.
So what's your question?
My question is, we understand. So I'm not going to ask you whether insurance is covering for COVID-19. We already understand that private insurance is not covering for COVID-19. But let's just confirm: is this the case?
Let me first go a little. Can I explain
By all means.
Give us the background, yes, and the context.
now? We perhaps need to know what a pandemic is and why your insurance cover will not cover a pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
And even when you have your insurance policy, the insurance policy does not cover everything.
Yep.
If you read your policy document, it will tell you, will cover you to this limit, will not cover you for this, that, and the other. And so therefore, when the World Health Organization pronounced, I think it was in January, 30th January, the WHO Director General declared that we were having a global outbreak,
Yep.
and it was declared a pandemic. Now, most policies do not cover pandemics. However, when it came, the first communication that was out from the Insurance Association of Kenya, and I don't speak for them, I'm not their spokesman, but I'm saying what they said,
Yep.
is that this is not covered. Then thereafter, the regulator said that, please, can you cover this? Because this is a pandemic, you need to put in your weight.
So it did not instruct them; it requested.
When your regulator asks you, it's sort of an instruction, isn't it?
So you're sort of bound. Okay, go ahead.
But the truth of the matter, maybe can we just discuss first what is COVID? Because from an insurance point of view, first we look at a risk. What is a risk? And then you assess it and say, yes, we can cover this one and this one we can't cover.
Okay.
So first of all, the insurance companies already knew, or within the insurance industry, they knew we cannot cover pandemics because they are so wide and big in nature. Okay? Now, let's talk about how much it costs to cover a pandemic like COVID. Now, with what a government official, when I think the CS and his officials were in Kilifi, they did give the figures what it costs to be treated in a government hospital per day.
Yeah.
If you have this mild COVID or the symptoms, it costs 21,400 per day to treat you.
Mm-hmm.
And the average time you might spend being treated could be anything from 0 to 14 days.
Mm.
Now that means it costs about 299, 600. Just to round it off, let's say it's 300,000.
Yeah.
So if we say we have, like, I think as of yesterday we had about 19,600 cases.
Yep.
Let's put it, round it off for the sake of maths. 20,000 times 300,000. What does that come to?
It's very many zeros. Is that 6 billion or 600 million?
That's 6 billion, yes. Then you talk about if somebody has to be hospitalized and now they need support, oxygen, and so on.
Yep.
It costs 51,000 per day. If they're there for 14 days, it costs 714,000.
Yep.
Let's say if only 10% of the people get it.
Yep.
Out of the 19, so you're talking about out of the 20, you're talking of 2,000. Can you do the math what it is?
A lot more money.
Yeah, and now let's also talk about the budget. How much does the Ministry of Health, what is their budget this year? It's 111 billion, about 111 billion.
Yep.
The insurance industry together, the whole insurance industry, what they collect as premium in medical premiums is about 40 billion. And last year, collectively, they made a loss of 1 billion shillings. As an industry, they did not make money. And when we talk about 40 billion, it means they are covering all diseases. Now, coming COVID, which will cost, basically this is a health tsunami that sweeps everybody on the path. And so therefore, the insurance industry looks at it and wonders, what do we do with this? So the first thing they did is said, we are not covering this. And then there was consultation, stakeholder consultation, and government said, look, you need to come in and we will help. And that is where then they said, we will cover you when you go to a public facility. And what they do is they tell you, because public facilities don't take the insurance card, is you pay and then you seek reimbursement from us. We will pay for the reimbursement. Now, for private hospitals, those figures I was giving you are government
facilities.
figures.
Private is more
for
expensive.
Private facilities, it's much more expensive. So what I'm just saying, that this thing is bigger than even our own country.
So the bottom line is, even if you are feeling sufficiently philanthropic, the insurance industry would not be able to shoulder this burden. Because just from the figures that you've given us, we are actually talking about 7 billion shillings for covering just the people who have tested positive, if all of them
10%.
went to government facilities.
A government facility.
And that's a lot of money.
And you know, by the time when this thing came along, we only had about 500 beds that could deal with the issue. So even when you have the money and everything, you go to the facility, you may not find a bed. So what I'm basically saying, everybody is overwhelmed. The government, the insurance industry, the hospitals, the health professionals. This thing is a very serious thing. And we ought to take it very seriously.
Harris, if I may ask, Has the
Yes.
insurance industry, well, they haven't, I mean, no one has ever faced the sort of situation we have with COVID, but has the insurance industry ever had illnesses that they probably, or conditions they previously have not covered, but which they've turned around and figured that they can at least find some way of helping their clients in covering at least, if not all the costs, part of the costs?
A good example is AIDS. When AIDS came, they never covered AIDS, if you remember, and you are well versed when it comes to AIDS. But today, they do cover AIDS. Now, we are in a situation where we are still learning what is this COVID, and we cannot assess what is COVID. How long are you going to be in hospital? How long is it going to be there? Because remember, insurance is about assessing risk. Now, you have a risk here that nobody understands, and truth be told, there's really no expert on COVID.
Yep.
People know bits and pieces of it. And so therefore, truth be told, the insurance industry is trying to respond, because now you're finding one or two insurance companies saying, if you pay an additional premium, we'll cover you a little bit for the COVID. And so it's a case-by-case basis, because this is something which can actually drown not only the industry, but even our health sector. So that when government says to people, please stay home, please wear the mask, please wash your hands, all those protocols, is because I guess those people recognize that the seriousness of COVID-19. And I think us people, including myself, we, at the beginning, were very casual about it. When they were talking about lockdown and all those things, we thought, no, that wasn't necessary. I mean, this is something that can be dealt with. But this is a pandemic. Pandemic basically means this is a health tsunami that can clear our health budget, our total health budget. Let's talk about America. About 1% of Americans have it, isn't it? Assuming, let's say, that 1% of Kenyans get COVID-19, we are about 47 million, isn't it?
Yes.
That means about 500,000 people will get COVID.
True, 470,000 to be precise.
Now, we have about 550,000 beds in all the hospitals in Kenya. Where are those people going to be hospitalized? And if the cost of COVID, when you're talking of mild COVID, is 300,000, who is going to pay for that? Can our budget accommodate that as a country?
But what our budget can accommodate are the preventative measures.
Yes. Actually, prevention is better than cure. We ought to be talking of how do we prevent COVID.
Which brings me to my next question, Harris.
Yes.
What you say chimes well, sounds good to the ear, pleasant to listen to, but how many people have access to this information that you're giving us? If you weren't on radio, if the insurance industry didn't focus its advertisements in the newspapers, which very few people read, how on earth would the common mwananchi arrive at this information?
I think people are trying to talk about it. You see a lot of adverts in radio, in the TV, and in billboards. They are trying to tell people, but people are very casual about it. Most people are very casual, even those who ought not to be casual. Because if you go to the drinking places and especially before the bars were closed, people continued with their lives. Actually, people don't take it seriously. If you see most people have a mask, they put it on their chin, isn't it?
It's true people don't take it seriously, but I would argue they don't take it seriously in comparison to what else. Because, you see, when you talk about illnesses in a setting like ours, believe me, it's put on a table and compared with other needs that somebody has.
Very true.
And care-seeking behavior is very rarely a priority.
Yes.
Yes. Unless you feel you're about to die, people very rarely seek help. They will tend to self-medicate.
Now, they ought to be told that this thing can kill you.
Actually, this is where I was going with this, Harris. I was trying to say that perhaps the insurance industry could join this fight in having this preventative approach and asking how best they can keep communicating not only their services, and the benefits of their services through the agents who come to talk to you, to sell you insurance, but perhaps begin introducing these same things in schools. I always start with schools when people are young, so that these are things they get to know and understand and grow with. So it's not something that springs on you when you start working, but it's something you've understood from an early age.
I totally agree. That's true.
What's I'm just thinking about the operations of many of the insurance companies that we have in the country.
Yes.
And if I was just to ask, what percentage of the population has taken up medical insurance policy?
A very low percentage.
And
you
what
probably would put it just like, I mean, it's people who are employed, the employer gives them insurance.
Yep.
And some individuals have insurance. I would put it probably maybe a million families.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So 1 million families have taken up a medical insurance policy.
Have insurance. Form of insurance. And these are statistics that I am drawing from the top of my head, but that's about what you would say.
So what would you attribute this to?
One, because we have mechanisms of how we deal with our challenges. Because if relatives fall sick, people raise money and they pay for it and so on.
Yeah.
Secondly, perhaps economically where we are.
Mm-hmm.
Not many people can afford insurance.
Okay.
And then thirdly, some people just don't care. They think, I'm healthy, I'll not fall sick.
Okay.
Because you find people who can afford insurance and they still don't have insurance.
The common thread in all this, Harris, is information and awareness.
Yes.
And it sounds to me that the sector, the insurance industry, starting from the regulator to the players in the sector, have not taken this as one of the key important aspects of their business. You want the people who come and take insurance, you price it exorbitantly high, and that's why the other people who are not able to afford this, if somebody does not have is not employed, where the employer is contributing to this, they will not take it for themselves because it's exorbitantly priced. So you've priced it out of the ordinary person. You have not communicated the importance of taking up insurance and the benefits of taking up insurance, and you've also not communicated also to the community the importance of taking up insurance. So that's why it's not that people do not take insurance because, but people are going to do a harambe for me. No. People know that at least there's a harambe, there's one form of insurance as a harambe, but if they had an alternative, they would take it up. What has the insurance industry done to spread awareness about the insurance and their products?
Eric, there are adverts all the time. There are agents out there selling insurance to people. And let me just take you back a little. Remember where I said the insurance industry is collecting about 40 billion?
Yep.
And collectively, they made a loss of 1 billion shillings.
Yep.
So the issue of exorbitantly priced is actually not the truth, because going to a hospital is very expensive.
Yeah.
And a lot of insurance companies are making losses. And let's even talk of NHIF. NHIF, you can get NHIF with 6,000 shillings a month. And you will get some form of cover that if you go to a mission hospital or a public hospital, you will not be charged.
Yeah.
Very few people have taken it up. They have about 7.5 members, 7.5 million members.
Yeah.
And a lot of the members are those people who are formally employed.
Mm-hmm.
But the volunteers who have taken up that cover are very few.
Mm-hmm.
So the challenge we have, and I agree probably, the insurance industry, the regulator, the government and schools and everyone should speak more about insurance so that people understand and take it up.
Yeah.
It ought to be done. And if you remember, there is the agenda, I think it's Agenda 4, it's one of the pillars, isn't it?
The big four.
The big four, yes.
Universal health coverage.
And I think the only place where there's been an uptick on it is in Makueni.
Mm-hmm.
Even villagers have a card which they go and they get treatment.
Yeah.
But most of the country, people haven't taken it up.
Yep. Which brings me back to the industry themselves and the kind of products and innovation of products. I strongly feel that there's room for insurance companies to come up with innovative ways of selling products. For instance, why do I have to take an annual insurance? Why not monthly insurance? Why can't I pay daily? What?
You can pay monthly. There are products where you can pay per month.
And how many people know the existence of these products?
How many insurance companies have monthly products, and how many people know about this?
Harris, what we're saying is that it looks like the insurance industry has tailored their products to a certain class of people in the country. And it isn't the majority. We're saying that the majority of people in this country who need health care do not get served by the insurance industry.
I believe there's room for improvement. And yes, I agree with you. We ought to improve. And especially COVID has brought a lot of things for us to realize that we are not prepared. I agree that we ought to do more, yes.
And then when it comes to now, for example, the way you're saying, addressing a pandemic like this one, and there's the conversation that happens within the association where majority of the insurance companies have come together and they've formed the Association of Kenya Insurers.
Yes.
On the other hand, there is the regulator who is an appendage of the government, and this is the Insurance Regulatory Authority.
Yes.
The kind of conversations that we have seen happen in this sector with COVID-19, like you said, initially, AKI came together and said, look, this is a pandemic, and therefore, under the pandemic, because it cuts across universally all the contracts that we've given out from our companies say pandemic we shall not cover, so therefore we shall not cover. A couple of days later, the regulator comes out and says, you know what, you guys, we strongly advise that you consider a way of helping. The conversations that we've seen happening, in your own honest assessment, have they happened in a way that would address an emergency in such a way that we're saying, look, we don't know what's happening, but one thing that we know for sure is that our people, our members will need some sort of support, and this is, if we sit down, you've got the best brains. The insurance sector has got the best brains in terms of actuaries. If we sit down and just did our math, this is the kind of support we could offer immediately if the government committed to offering this kind of support. Did we see that conversation happening?
It happened, and it is still happening. Negotiations are going on. And that is why I'm saying some insurers now you see are saying we are going to cover to this level. Mm-hmm. And they have agreed that you go to the government facility and we will pay for that.
Okay.
So, but I agree that the speed that that conversation is going and the action is not as fast as it should be. But remember also, everybody is being very cautious, because even if, let's take for example, where the more developed world, they also have a crisis. They are not responding. And our economy, let's be very honest, it is a very small economy.
Yep.
And that is why even you find the government appealing to the people who donate to us or give us loans and saying, help us. But they also have a crisis and they have something on their plate. They are not able to help much.
True.
So this is what I would say. Number one, I agree, government, insurance, hospitals, health professionals, and everybody should try and pull together. And this is not a time to think profits, but see how do we deal with this crisis. Because if you think about this crisis, it's like how big COVID is that our children have been at home from March.
They're going to lose a full year.
Yes, hotels are closed. People have lost work.
Yep.
And when they lose work, remember what happens. It means that the premiums that were being paid to the insurance industry
Have dried up as well. Yeah, true.
Have dried up, so they don't have money. So when you say the insurance industry should, they are also bearing losses.
True.
They are losing customers because those organizations that are laying off people are not going to pay those premiums.
It's concerted effort. Harris, we'll be taking a break shortly, but before we go to a break, Alan is calling in from Nairobi and he's got a question or comment for you. Alan, good morning.
Yes. Good morning. I think the big elephant in the house, my brother,
Yes.
is the cost. I mean, that guy is doling out figures about what it costs to do. We need to find out what is contained in that cost. Is it an ICU bed? I mean, the truth of the matter is insurance and hospitals, have come together to make just medical, the cost to drive the medical costs too high. Why should a COVID? That's the question you should be asking. Why should a COVID patient cost what? I mean, those figures those guys were doling out. They don't end up. Is it an ICU bed or what is it? And even in terms of drugs, what drugs are they taking? Right. So that's the first thing we should. And there's a big problem happening right now, Mr. Latiff.
Yeah.
Today, if you fall sick and you're looking for a hospital bed in Nairobi, you will not get it. It has happened to a friend of mine who ended up dying in Machakos.
Yeah.
Because he had gone all throughout Nairobi. Now, one of the reasons why that is happening is hospitals don't want to admit COVID patients. One, because they don't have the systems capacities to manage the spread.
Yeah.
And two, this issue of insurance.
Yeah.
Because most guys coming up there may not be able to pay, and they don't. So when you go, you see that story of Papa Shirandula that the widow was talking about.
Yeah.
The truth of the matter is, hospitals are not willing to take up this COVID patients.
True.
So,
and Alan, I think what you're raising is actually a very strong point. And every time we raise the question of the cost, it all comes back down to, and I don't know if you heard when we speak to the CEO of Nairobi Hospital or the chairman of the Private Hospitals Association or even the government, this cost, for example, 21,000 shillings per day per patient is because of the PPEs, because everybody who's attending to you has got to wear PPEs. And then they're just one off and you have to discard them. So this is basically bringing the cost to very high.
No, but listen, Eric, even the people, what I need, the costs should be interrogated. Because even
each
those
item.
PPEs, for each item, even those PPEs, somebody tells you PPEs and they cost 10,000 shillings, right? What goes into the cost? I think that's one of the things. But insurance companies, HMOs, and there's so much corruption involved on insurance.
Yeah.
One of the reasons in the beginning of this crisis, people were not going to hospitals, and one of the reasons that people were saying is they fear catching COVID.
Yeah.
But the big issue was insurance. Yeah.
Because of whether you're covered.
Yeah, people just go to hospitals. When you're covered, you just take your family, let's go for a check.
Yeah.
When you're covered. But now that they knew that going to hospital can be a problem, people stop going to whatever.
Good point,
we must discuss insurance and the cost of insurance and the cost of medical. Even outside COVID, we really need to go back there.
And that's why we have Harris this morning to speak with us. Thank you very much, Alan, for the genuine concerns. And Harris, you've heard that when you come out of this break.
Yes, I've heard that.
When you come out of this break, we are going to discuss those issues that Alan is raising. Plus, I'm seeing very many comments also coming in on social media. Spice FM KE on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. The issue is insurance service providers in the country, the health management organizations and hospitals in the country, and the cost of healthcare in Kenya. what exactly is happening and what needs to be done. Good morning, 25 minutes to 10 o'clock. We want to take a look at what's happening on the roads shortly.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah!
You're listening to Spice FM.
All right, so what's happening on the roads this morning? In Utawala, along the eastern bypass, an accident happened earlier, and this was between a matatu and a truck, and it was a very bad one. And somebody also commented and said, matatus on this road are always reckless. There's a Toyota Prado that has just rolled on the southern bypass inbound towards Langata and just past Ole Sereni, where the bypass curves for Wilson's runway towards Langata interchange. Anyone from the Langata police area, please go and attend to that. So a car has rolled on the southern bypass just past Ole Sereni near the Wilson airport. So this is an issue that's also, of course, raises the issue of maybe there's going to be some traffic snarl-up on the southern bypass outbound from Ole Sereni going towards Ngong Road. So be careful with that. Anywhere else that you think we need to alert people about, please let us know on Spice FM KE, Facebook, YouTube and Twitter, or 0719 012 600. Conversation continues. It's about insurance, medical insurance, life insurance, and all other insurance. But let's start with medical. We're in COVID times. This is a pandemic. The insurance industry globally is very, very clear that when it comes to pandemic, we are not quick to accept liability because of the cost associated and also because
the nature of a
pandemic. You don't know what it's going to cost you to provide a service to
so
your
you
members.
actually can't figure out what you should even charge.
Yeah. And then there is the issue of what has happened in this country. So once this was declared a pandemic globally, local insurance industry said so. Automatically, we are therefore not able to cover.
But Eric, what seems to be coming out even in social media is that there is a general mistrust that people seem to have for the insurance industry.
Indeed. Harris, let me just read a couple of comments here on social media for you to get this.
Please do.
MK says, lack of awareness is not the issue, Eric and CT. The insurance experience in Kenya is an expensive and painful affair, particularly in private hospitals. Somebody else says, the speaker is saying that we shall not cover when we cannot make a profit. Insurance is tailored to make a profit for the insurer. They don't want to take risks. For cancer treatment, for example, they tell you to contribute for 2 years before they can start paying for medical bills. I have emails. See, the kind of feeling that people have about the insurance sector, the insurance industry.
It is not a love experience.
And
No,
yet,
it isn't.
And yet this should be your partners. That's why you're taking up the insurance policy, so that in the event that these people shall stand by you.
That is true. Now, as I speak, I don't. I mean, one. I want to say that please remember that we are also human,
Yep.
and this pandemic is also affecting us personally because we also have relatives and we also ourselves have can get sick, and there are people in the industry who are falling sick.
Yeah.
Now, the caller who last called, Alan, I'm really sorry what happened. Because what happened is because he exactly described that hospitals are not accepting patients because in some cases they don't have the space,
Yep.
because the place is full,
Yep.
or because also you do not, perhaps the patient does not have the money to pay.
Yep.
And so they ask them go to the public facility. And so, and he also said that he said something which that hospitals and insurance are profiting from this.
It appears.
Is that what I?
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, you heard him quite correctly. That's his perspective, yes.
Honestly, everyone is overwhelmed by it. And I do not know of anybody who is profiting from it. And it's difficult for people to believe that, but it is true. When you look at those numbers that we are talking about, and I think, Eric, you mentioned how much it costs, it is an overwhelming cost. And like we had talked, that we need to actually think more of prevention, not treating. Because the cost of treatment is just something we cannot afford as an industry, an insurance industry, or government, or as individuals.
But also realistically, it's inevitable that we will have to treat a certain number in our population.
Yes.
It's inevitable. I mean, this is a fact that we also have to deal with.
Yes. And what now, because it's important we find a solution, because if we play the blame game, we don't move forward. For me, I feel that, and this is my opinion. It's not an industrial opinion or government. I'm talking as Harris Muirode.
Yeah.
Is that the insurance industry, government, and also well-wishers, because even companies are affected, and every each of us is work together to dealing with this problem. It is not a time for anybody to think profit. It is survival. We are all on survival mode.
Yeah.
So anybody who probably is making money out of this, probably we need to appeal to them and say, look, can you lower these costs? Because the truth of the matter, it is something which can actually kill our economy.
Is it possible, Harris, to
Yes.
have a proper audit or interrogation of the costs? Because we are talking about, for example, in public, when the government says it's costing us 21,000 shillings to treat a COVID patient per day.
Per day, yes.
And this is there's no cost of medication because there's very little medication that's being given to many of the patients.
Yes.
It is only the cost of accommodation and then the cost of the PPEs. Is it possible, even if we talk about the private hospitals where this now almost goes to double, is it possible for an open discussion where we say this is what it's costing and we can clearly see it's a cost of purchase which has directly been transferred to the patient?
More importantly, is that the only cost? And can you actually audit and give evidence that this is as low as it can possibly get and that there are no other alternatives?
That's an excellent idea. I think it should be done. I agree. Because if the cost of 21,400 per day, we need to look at it and say, can we get it cheaper?
Yeah.
Because if we don't, it will kill all of us. But this is not the time to pass blame. Even you as a press,
Yeah.
you need to talk about COVID and tell people this thing is alive. You need to be careful. All of us need to chip in to find a solution.
And we do this, and that's why we have this kind of conversations all the time, because our role as well is to ask the questions. So when, for example, we speak to the Private Hospitals Association and the members of the private hospitals, they also talk about these high costs. And they talk about the difficulty of accessing the supply chain, where because it's a global pandemic, everybody's having difficulty, for example, getting the N95 masks. And where you come to get them, there are cartels who have infiltrated the market, and therefore the costs have gone up. So what is the best way? And why I keep bringing this up is I would have expected some sort of leadership from the players, especially the Association of Kenya Insurers, the regulator, the Private Hospitals Association, the government, saying one of you or two or three of the people, not you. I mean, I understand that you are running your own private business, but the people in those leadership positions to come together and say, let's find a solution that works best for our people. If it's about insurance companies, this is the best we can do.
I agree, and that ought to be done, and I know those conversations are being held.
Okay.
And it is a difficult conversation because somebody has gone and probably procured equipment from wherever in the world, because remember, everybody in the world needs these things, so the costs have gone up.
Yeah.
So they've brought them into the country. It has cost them so much, and they want to put a markup. That's a discussion that you say, this is not the time to do that. Can you sell this can you sell it a little cheaper? And I believe people are human, they will do it. It's one of those very difficult conversations we have to have with every stakeholder involved, whether it's hospitals, whether it's doctors, whether it's insurance companies, whether it's government, and everybody, because this is not the time for profit.
True.
We are on survival mode. As I say, this is a health tsunami.
Yeah. We'll also, by the way, we also must talk about that time for profit and the kind of profit that the players
because it's
go
immoral.
for.
Let's be honest. It would be immoral for you to be profiting.
When it's about a life and death situation.
Yes.
But health and seeking medical assistance is a life and death situation all the time.
Yes.
Harris, tell me, in your opinion, has the insurance industry ever bothered with the rural folk in our country, people whose livelihood is derived from working or functioning in the rural areas? I say this because our rural areas still contain the largest part of our population.
Indeed. Before you answer that, Harris, let's also hear from Paul, who's calling in from Mombasa. Paul, good morning.
Good morning to you.
You've got a question for Harris Moirori?
Yes, it's not a question, it's just a comment. I like Harris. Harris is a true example of an insurance person, where even in the discussion, he's agreeing to almost everything. And he's saying that, yes, we ought to do, yet these are things they know very well. These are things people have raised. For example, you go to a hospital with an insurance card and someone else goes to pay cash, the cost will totally be different. The person with cash will be charged less, the person with the card will be charged more. And hospitals, especially these big hospitals, will really run to the people with the cards, because I don't know whether they find it cheap money or whatever. I don't know. I'm a big friend of mine who happens to be in the pharmacy section, and they tell me that anyone with an insurance card will be given even those drugs that they don't need, so that they don't expire on the shelves.
Wow.
Because they know that will be paid. And they don't question, the people even themselves don't question those, whatever they've been given, because it's kind of free.
Yeah.
Kenyans, once you have a card, you think it's
insurance
free.
That's paying, not you.
It's not me, it's insurance that's paying. So they'll be given even drugs they don't need just to clear their shelves, you see. And I think insurance knows this, because this is not happening on another planet.
So you think there's collusion?
there is collusion somewhere, and the doctors know.
Let me ask,
the
but
insurance guys
where
know.
would the collusion on the part of the insurance companies be? Because what you're suggesting is loss making for the insurance company. Because if someone is being charged for something that they don't need, then it means money is being spent by the insurance company for something that they shouldn't have spent money on. So why would they collude to lose money?
There is collusion in this sense. You know, Kenya is a funny, it's a very interesting country to live in, whereby it's man eat man society. You see, people who are employed in the insurance company, they are employed. They don't take that to be their own.
Yep.
They think it's an employment. I'm here to eat and live. That's a Kenyan mentality, which is a very wrong mentality. So the people who are supposed to be watching over some of those pilferages in their own companies are the ones who are making deals.
Oh, so collusion by staff, not collusion by the industry
the staff.
itself. Okay.
By the staff.
Get your point.
Yeah.
Mwenda Kisilu
can I
also
answer?
says, yeah, as you answer that, Mwenda Kisilu also says on Twitter, unfortunately, there are a number of people in the insurance companies who also have shares in private hospitals.
Basically, what the gentleman who has just talked and the one who has tweeted,
Yep.
we are talking about corruption. And it is true that there's a lot of fraud and a lot of self-profiting, so to speak,
Yeah.
that people want to profit from people's illnesses. And so somebody goes to hospital and the bill is made to be higher so that the pharmacist can make money and the doctor can make money and so on and so forth. So like any part of the economy, we have that challenge that there is a lot of fraud going on, and hence that is why a lot of insurance companies are making losses. And of course, there is also the whole issue of people feeling that because I have an insurance card, let me go to the hospital and get checked. And in some cases, I know people go and get perfumes and other things, and it's said it's a drug. So there is fraud. Yes, I agree.
Okay. So this is a
And
case of
it is
fraud.
a challenge. Yes, and that is not, I mean, it's not the insurance industry benefited. We are making losses.
Okay. Let's
Yeah.
take another quick break, Harris. Harris Moirore is the MD of Swift Life Insurance. We are talking about medical insurance this morning. When you come out of this break, Harris, you'll respond to CT's question of how the insurance industry in Kenya is addressing the majority of Kenya's population that lives in rural areas in terms of outreach, in terms of coming up with products that would suit them,
No.
in terms of even fitting their bill. So let's just take a quick break. We'll come back. That'll be the first question that you respond to. Good morning. It's 7 minutes to 10 o'clock.
...24/7, around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM. Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo-soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah!
You're listening to Spice FM.
5 minutes to the top of the hour and also to the conclusion of the show for this week. We are speaking with Harris Moirori, who's joining us on the line. Harris is the Managing Director of Swift Life Insurance, talking about medical insurance this morning. Harris, before we went to the break, CT Muga had asked you what the insurance industry has done and has been doing to reach out and cover people in the rural areas.
Now, several players actually do have county insurance where you can pay up to a premium of about 10,000 shillings for a cover of 100 or 200,000. So different players actually do have insurance where they have branches all over the country and people are taking it up. It's slow, but people are taking up the insurance.
So how much would the premium be?
For
such products?
You can get a premium of about 15,000 shillings for a cover of about 200,000-300,000 worth of cover.
Right.
Yes.
And you're saying that the uptake of this has been slow so far.
Yes, like you say, the industry is also treated. People are still fairly suspicious about insurance. Yes.
Harris, I would argue they're more suspicious of the costs. 15,000 shillings is a lot of money for most Kenyans when you consider that very many don't even earn that amount of money.
So because you're talking about more than 1,000 shillings a month.
Yes.
Although I guess it's the issue of the communication for me, because I think if somebody imagines that they are covered to the tune of 300,000 shillings for them and their family, and then they would pay 1,000 shillings thereabouts per month, you can even start having a conversation. I'm sure if there was a higher uptake, maybe even this premium may come down.
Perhaps I could also say, like the NHIF, there is the voluntary cover, which you pay about
500,
6,000 shillings a year, and you're covered in government and mission hospitals. But that also, a lot of people have not taken it up. So I could agree with you that we probably need to be there needs to be a little more effort in getting the public to take up the products.
Actually, it's creativity, Harris, because you see the market clearly exists. People need this product.
Yes.
But if the people who are supposed to be the players in this particular industry, if their attitude doesn't seem to take into consideration innovation that would help them benefit from the numbers, then what it says is that they are happy with what they already have, or also conversely, they're not really very concerned about that particular market.
It's a period of banking before equity.
Yes.
And the mindset of the people in the industry.
Yes, and that's a challenge that we probably need to take up and do it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Harris, we need to have this conversation once again in coming days, talking about generally all insurance and insurance policies, and even creating awareness and educating people on the importance of insurance and how insurance works and the thinking behind insurance companies. We'll invite you once again to speak to us. I hope you'll accept our invitation.
Yes, I will. Yes, I will.
Yeah.
But as we finish, can I say something?
Yes.
Yes.
Please let us follow the protocols given by government. Prevention is better than cure. And I can assure you that there are many people who are having sleepless nights trying to find solutions within the insurance industry, within government, within hospitals. Not everybody is heartless. And I'm praying that we'll be able to find a solution which we will tackle this pandemic that we currently have.
Thank you very much, Harris Moirori, the MD of Swift Life Insurance. We wish you a lovely weekend.
Thank you.
Coming to the end of the show, CT Muga, today's proverb.
Before the proverb, let me just ask the question. Do Kenyans know that 88% of deaths caused by diarrheal illness worldwide are attributed to unsafe water? Meaning, if you had safe water, many of the deaths that are caused by diseases like diarrhea would actually be eliminated by 88%.
Do governments know this?
Governments know this. They even have public health policies. The insurance industry ought to know this. But more importantly, instead of talking insurance, should we not be talking about the provision of safe water?
Such basics.
Such basics.
Okay.
Let me go for today's proverb. And it follows right at the tail of what I've just said. If your mouth turns into a knife, it will cut your lips. If instead of providing solutions to a problem, all you do is looking at what benefits you without looking at the larger picture, you end up harming yourself. The very benefit that you could actually derive, you will actually eliminate it even for yourself. So, your mouth will turn into a knife and you will cut your lips.
Sharp words, those words.
They're meant to be.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for tuning into the Situation Room this week. Join me 6 a.m. to 10. Now, CT Muga and Latiff with you.
Sugar and spice and everything I spice it up.
Spice up